Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for another transfer special and quite possibly the most craziest day of transfer news in, well, at least Chelsea history. Let's be specific in terms of Chelsea outgoing news, but it might not just be Chelsea. It might be that we've had the craziest day of sale news of any club ever. How has this happened? This is absolutely insane. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, please do excuse no streams the last few days. I had a lot going on personal life. So thankfully we're better and things are hopefully sorted. So that's great. So we're back now. Please do excuse the unshavenness as well. Didn't get around to that either. My days is all kicking off at the moment. But my days, what a day it has been. Havertz going to Arsenal. Half of the squad going to Saudi Arabia. Kovacic is going to Manchester City. Are we cheating? Not just the whole Premier League. All of Europe apparently thinks we're cheating now. It's absolutely mental. We've rejected another bid for Mason Mount. And there's so much news and there's barely any for incomings. Now, obviously, the whole Nicolas Jackson stuff, the whole Caicedo stuff, which we spoke about when we last streamed, that's still going on. And that will probably, materialize over the next few days. But as we all knew over the last few weeks before the transfer window even officially opened, what we're mainly going to focus on as a club in June is going to be sales. And oh boy, has it kicked off. Bertram, I'll start with you. First of all, thank you for being back on. I appreciate it very much. It's been a crazy day, hasn't it? We'll keep Havertz for a little bit later. But Kovacic to Man City, Koulibaly, I'm just going to say they're all going to Saudi Arabia because I'll be honest, I will never remember all of each clubs. Is it Mendy to Al-Hilal and Koulibaly to I don't remember. But they're all going to Saudi Arabia, one of the Saudi Arabian clubs. What would you make of it all? We'll get into the cheating speculation in a little bit as well. But let's just start it off with, just in general, have we found our saviors? As much as, there might be some dodgy business going on over there, purely focusing on our side of things, and Chelsea, financial fair play, Premier League financial regulations, have we found our saviors? Because it sure does feel like we have.
Oh, it's been amazing. I think it was not a concern, but it was very interesting to see how we offload all these players and get funds in before the 30th of June, so we could take them onto this year in accounting sense. Sorry, but no, it's been amazing. I think the discussion these last couple of days, especially the last 2 days, have been quite colored. It's been quite hectic towards us, which I'm going to be honest, I love. I don't really need anyone to love us. So seeing the hate come towards us and seeing, as you said before, the cheating allegations against us, it's pretty brilliant, to be honest. The rivals fans' tears and all of that. But I think we owe the Saudis who have come in and paid pretty much fair market price for a lot of our players. We owe them for showing interest. It's not like we couldn't have sold them to anyone else. Let's not go down that route. Koulibaly, Mendy, they still would have been decent players in any European top 5 league. So I think it's good to see them go. I'm quite conflicted with for example, Havertz today. We see him going to Arsenal. It's a very good price. But it is quite tough to see a legend, in my eyes, definitely, of our club go to a rival. So for players like Kante, some of these players who mean a lot to us, a lot of the spine of that Champions League winning team, it would have been difficult to see them going to other Premier League teams. So for me, it's been very good seeing these outgoings, even though I think it'll come back to bite us. I think the likes of Kovacic going to City. I think Pais, you'll shed more light on that later, but that's a very good signing for them. Havertz could turn out to be a good signing, but from our point of view, almost all of the Caicedo funds have been pulled in today. So I don't know how Pais and Fabrizio and the likes of all the journalists, they get sleep these days. So very good, very happy to get some sales in, and the teams. It's beginning to look like something now.
There you go, Pais. I will come to you. Mo should join us as well in about 10-15 minutes. We'll see when he turns up. Pais, I'm not quite sure whether you go quite as far as Troy here, but a lot of people are obviously in a slightly different camp as Bertram. It's very weird how certain players just divide. I'm not sure if this happens at every club or if it's just our club where this happens, but it's clearly Kai Havertz, Mason Mount, these types of players, they couldn't divide the fan base more than they do. People like Troy call it Havertz Independence Day, baby. Do you know what I mean? On the one hand, the fact that he wanted to go to Arsenal has pissed me off a little bit. So I'm like, right then, screw you, go on then, piss off. But at the same time, I'm like, well, still appreciate you for Porto. Still think we should have done him better, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, he didn't really perform well enough. But I mean, you can touch on Havertz for a little bit as well. We'll get into more details in a minute as well. But in general, I want to start with the in general Saudi stuff as well. Are they our saviors? Would you put it that way?
I mean, yeah, I honestly would. I mean, what's funny is, the fees that we're getting are not big fees at all. So I know we'll come on to this whole discussion of, are we cheating? I mean, that sort of thing is nonsense, but we'll talk about it more in depth later, I suppose. But yeah, I think they are our saviors at the minute. I mean, try and sell Ziyech and Koulibaly and, Mendy. It's going to be difficult this summer. We expected them to leave, but, I definitely had reservations in the back of my mind. Like, are we actually going to be able to get all of these guys gone? Or is it just going to be a case of like, we sell 5 and then, we have to sell 5 the next summer and stuff? Like, can we actually get all of these guys out in one summer? Saudis have come in, and why they're our saviors is because they're willing to pay the wages and up them even more. That's the thing. It's not really the fees, it's the wages, because I think we could agree fees for these players with other clubs. They wouldn't pay the wages. And when they won't
our
pay the
players
wages,
wouldn't want to join them just to.
Yeah, and then when they don't pay the wages, then you end up offering something like loan deals and stuff like that, which is very common. You see that with Inter Milan, They've been bidding for other players, but they can't afford Koulibaly's wages. So they were like, okay, let's have a loan then. And we was like, no. So there are saviors in the sense of they're massively helping our wage book. Like, honestly, like I think it'd be great if someone could do like an accurate a deep dive. Maybe Athletic or someone will do it in terms of like how much we've cleared off our books and stuff when the window ends, because I think it's going to be a hell of a lot. Obviously, we'll bring players in, but the hope is on that. Is if we can agree, these incentivized contracts, then we're absolutely laughing. I mean, Kante, club legend, absolutely love him. I'm gutted he's left. Honestly, I'm really sad about it. But that's £300,000 off the books. Koulibaly, like £300,000. Ziyech, 150 plus. Mendy's on less, but still money. So that's why they're our saviors. It's because of the wages.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, mate. And that's the big thing. Obviously, Havertz was earning a lot as well, even though there was various different kind of reports in terms of how much he was making. Was it 250k? Was it 190? Was it 200? Who knows, right? How much exactly it was. Fact of the matter is, we've got a lot of wages of our books. Now, on the one hand, that is obviously, I think that's great. On the other hand, I'm like, now that we have a whole bunch, an entire squad on quite low wages, I'm really intrigued to, as the next year develops, maybe once we make it to the Champions League again, when we hear what these lesser contracts, what these incentivized contracts mean when we are back in Europe. What exactly, like how much these players are earning then? Because I do still have those minor worries that if we ever want to sign proper stars again, not just up-and-coming talents, even though Caicedo is obviously already a star, but still kind of on that verge in between, I suppose. If we want those players again, we will also have to pay big wages at some point if we want those kind of players. So it's good on the one hand, but it's bad on the other hand because, well, not bad, but there is a small little irk to it for me where I'm like, yeah, but if we ever sign one player on big wages, then the whole entire rest of the squad will be fuming. So that is the only thing I will mention. But before we get into even more of the outgoings talk, let's mention that one thing which we haven't been able to stream about yesterday in incomings. Obviously, Caicedo, Jackson, maybe we'll touch on it later on if we have the time. But was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. Chelsea have officially announced the signing of Christopher Nkunku from RB Leipzig for, what was it, £53 million, 60 odd million euros. They've officially announced it. Personally, they've waited so long. Why couldn't they have waited a couple of weeks longer and announced him with the new shirt, with the new sponsor, as much as the new sponsor is not something to be proud of, as long as it presumably will be staying. But I don't really understand why they had to do it yesterday and not wait to do proper pictures. It's just like, this is a huge signing. Like, and all we're getting is a few social media posts. I think we could have done that a little bit better. But in general, I'm very, very excited for Nkunku. And I have quite a lot of faith in him. I really hope it goes well. If it's another signing from Leipzig, from the Bundesliga, just another big name signing, that's gone, that's backfired on us. I will lose all sorts of hope. So I have a lot of, for me, a lot is riding on Nkunku. I will say that. There was it Matt Law that said Chelsea are kind of like, think they put like they hit the jackpot with a 3-in-1 player who can play up front. There's a 10 out wide, which while maybe I can say like, oh yeah, that's one thing that maybe I can agree with that, but he can't play all three at the same time, right, Chelsea? So I hope they remember that part as well, because I don't want him to be a striker option and a 10 option, but you can't be both, mate. Like, yeah, he has to play in one position mainly. But in general, I'll start with you, Bertram. Excited and happy about Nkunku? It's not like it blew none of us off our chairs, did it? Because obviously we knew it, and we knew that this was going to happen for months and months. But it was still good to get it announced eventually, I guess.
Yeah, I was pretty relieved, to be honest. I'm just very happy to see it finally confirmed. I will always, when I see, Fabrizio's tweet, here we go, 9 out of 10 times, even more than that, like 999,000 times out of a million, it'll be good. But, it's always good to just see him there. And it's all the more frustrating that he isn't standing with our kit, because, that's a whole different shambles. But yeah, very, very, very excited. I was listening yesterday to Son of Chelsea, who got one of the Bundesliga commentators, who's also an expert on the Bundesliga, to talk about him, and it seems we have some player, because we all have the Werner PTSD and the Havertz as well, even though he did what he did for us. But it seems that this is a very different type of player. It isn't a player who exploits deep spaces behind. It's a very technical player we've got. It's, as you alluded to previously, a 3-in-1 player who can both play on the wing, very high technical ability as well, is able to link up. We even saw in the DFB Pokal final a couple of weeks ago when he came in and he changed the game. Big player, has the aura as well. Hopefully he can continue doing the balloon celebration, but just with a blue balloon this time instead of a red one. So I think this is some player we have.
Probably going to ban that as well, like a Paramount sponsorship. Do you know what I mean?
Look, we might not get into that later, but that's a whole different shambles. But it seems, after for the commentator's opinion, that he's the best player in the Bundesliga. Came in as well that game against Bayern. So I think I can't remember. Heis, it might have been you who tweeted that he was a big game player, or someone at least tweeted that he was a big game player, scored a lot of goals in a lot of big games for Leipzig. So I think we need
Leipzig,
to.
remember
that's for Leipzig as well.
Well, German terms are quite a big team, but in the grand scheme of European football, they're not. So against those teams that he scored goals against, that arguably makes it even more impressive.
Exactly. I think it will, mentally, I think it give him 1 or 2% when we rock up at the Etihad next season in better shape than this season, knowing he scored 3 goals there. So I think we all need to be very, very excited about him, but also, as it is with any signing, I think especially this season, I think most of the signings from last season, we almost need to give a fresh start. This season as well, a lot of player turnover. So I think even though he might not shine as we want him to, because he's almost a ready-made player, I think we need to give him a month or two. But I think we can, as Chelsea fans, be very, very happy and very excited to see Nkunku chart out for us.
I did like Lewis's tweet about him. Shout out, by the way, to everybody that joined from Lewis's stream earlier. Shout out Lewis. Shout out everyone that joined from him. He said, well, what did he say? Like, it was so nice that Nkunku'd him twice. Very good. Pice, I'll come to you. Obviously, like I just touched on with Bertram, we knew that this was happening, so it's not like didn't blow us off our seats because, like I say, we knew it was coming. But it's still a very exciting play. And it's still, as much as we wasted a lot of, not wasted, but we spent a lot of effort in getting Nkunku and, time, money, resources a long time ago, which we could have done with him, I guess, now. But it's still really good to have him in now early, right? Like he will be there from day one of preseason. He will, he knows he's coming. There's not like negotiations still happening. There's not like still, left, right, center. No one really knows what's happening. He doesn't know. The club doesn't know. His teammates don't know. That he's already like in the French national team with Fofana and stuff like that. They can already talk about things and like be prepared, be ready. I think this is, as much as it would have been nice to have him early, I guess, considering we kind of already sealed things early into this past season, this is the perfect way to get a new player, to have him, be able to start from day one, not join halfway through preseason, let alone when the Premier League has already kicked off.
Yeah. I think what's the good thing about this is obviously, it is finally announced, and we can just settle now. Like there was a lot of obviously speculation about, some people even thought this one wouldn't go through. But if like we signed him just like now in the summer transfer window, like this would be getting so much more hype as well. Like that's the funny thing about it.
Yeah.
So I think the timing was obviously interesting, but I guess that was pre-agreed by the club. So I would almost certainly say, considering it came after the final game of his actual season, which was obviously the France game. So yeah, I thought it was going to be announced after the final that Leipzig had, but again, I think this is a case of like pre-agreement way back when it was actually done. And yeah, I found it quite funny the other day when Nkunku was sitting in the same interview as Wesley Fofana, and they literally asked, like, isn't Nkunku joining Chelsea? And Nkunku was just sitting there like smiling, trying not to laugh side of things. So I was like, yeah, that's quite funny. It's definitely done. So yeah, it's nice to see they actually did a video as well. I really like announcement videos, not just a generic club statement. That was nice to see. I quite enjoyed that one.
Yeah, no, so did I. So did I. It was pretty good. I mean, that's not too much to go over from the statement by Chelsea. He says, I'm incredibly happy to be joining Chelsea. Said Nkunku, a big effort was made to bring me to the club, and I'm looking forward to meeting my new coach and teammates and showing the Chelsea supporters what I can do on the pitch. Having played in Liga and the Bundesliga, I now want to play in the Premier League, one of the strongest leagues in the world. I'm very excited for this challenge, and will be proud to wear the Chelsea shirt. I mean, otherwise, let's not get into too much detail. We spoke about Nkunku so many times when the whole thing was kind of happening, I suppose. But it is crazy when you think about it that he did his medical while Thomas Tuchel was still a manager. He signed the contract while Graham Potter was still the manager. Then we had Frank Lampard in for a little bit as a manager. And now he is joining us with Mauricio Pochettino as a manager. So it is a little bit crazy. But yeah, welcome Nkunku. I'm excited. I hope he fulfills our hopes and dreams, I guess. I'm very excited. I'm almost stopping myself from getting overexcited just because, yeah, we've been banned a few too many times. So I'm not saying, I signed the greatest player in the world. As much as he might be the best player in the Bundesliga, that is also, as much as Nkunku is great, that is also just a sign of how bad the Bundesliga is. Let's also be very clear on that. But yeah, at the same time, very interesting someone to say Nkunku, is he better than Bellingham? You know, obviously Bellingham is only 19, but still, when people say Nkunku is the best player in the Bundesliga, it's interesting. It's very, very interesting. So certainly does look good. But yeah, I mean, Barella for worth 100 million. I'm not sure exactly what Ashraf is talking about, but bloody Newcastle are doing crazy things again now. They're signing Tonali, apparently, which makes me think if Tonali's leaving, should we not try for Mignon again? Like, you know, I mean, I'm not sure if we'll have time to touch on the whole Kepa number one thing, but yeah, it is most certainly crazy. I do want to, let's just go through these outgoing to Saudi Arabia news one by one. Let's talk about them for a little second individually, I suppose. I don't know in exactly which order they came out this morning, but personally, they have the nicest kit. And Al-Hilal is the guys we played in the Super Cup semi-finals last year, wasn't it? So, you know, that's something. But yeah, Fabrizio Romano earlier today said, I understand Al-Hilal are now closing in on Khalidou Koulibaly deal. Here we go. Verbal agreement reached with Chelsea. Personal terms have also been agreed on a 3-year contract. He'll join Ruben Neves, who is also joining Al-Hilal from Wolves. Contract now being checked and then signed. Here we go. Obviously, Pice, we were speaking in quite a lot of detail in the last stream when I was a bit more of the opinion, let's keep him, let's give him another year. But you and Ollie, I can't remember who else was on the stream with us, were kind of a bit on the other side of that coin. In the end, you were like, he's a must sell. He has been, you know, sold, I guess, or is being sold now. Pleased with that. It's interesting. We'll touch on that maybe later. There's also still rumors of maybe still Chalobah leaving, which then overdoes it completely, in my opinion, where I'm like, all right, do we want any centre backs next season? Like, why waste time on buying another one? Just keep Chalobah. He's fine, you know, as a fifth choice. If now we've made our bed that Koulibaly is the one that's going, before signing another young player, just keep Chalobah. But Koulibaly's out. I mean, not Lukaku levels, but certainly not a successful transfer. I mean, we gave him the 26. The dude only lasted a year, my days. Do you know what I mean? And that is very disappointing. But hey, at least he scored a great goal against Spurs. So that's something, I suppose.
Is this for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was on Marcel just because Levi Colwill exists. And as much as I'm not a fan of, like, you know, this guy gets in the team, you know, no matter what, like, I am a massive fan of Colwill over the last year. I think his performances have been so good. And I think we should be looking to the future, really. And I think he would have, like, Koulibaly staying would have definitely hurt Colwill's chances. You know, we may have even had to include him in you know, a Caicedo deal. And even if it was on loan, you know, there's no guarantees. And once you spend 2 years at one club, will he ever want to play for Chelsea again? So those sort of things were, you know, those sort of like ideas were like weighing up in my head. And I was thinking, Yeah, as much as I would like to see Koulibaly have another year here, I think if we could have get rid of him, then get rid of him. I don't think it's worked out. I think he's been pretty poor. I think it's a good sale, but it would have been nice to see him given another year. But I think this one's just like, circumstances more than anything. Because again, like if Colwell didn't exist, Koulibaly didn't play left centre back, I probably wouldn't have wanted to sell him, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, no, there you go. I mean, there's some people in the chat talking about who gets the 26 now. People talking about Colwell. If he signs a new contract, I'm happy to give Colwell the 26. If he plays, but without still signing a new contract this season, I do not want to give him the 26 just yet. But Bertram, where do you stand on Koulibaly being, leaving now? Were you in the camp of that you wanted him to go? Would you have preferred to keep him? At the same time, I still don't. The most baffling thing to me is still why he wasn't such ridiculously high wages in the first place last year, if I'm being perfectly honest. I mean, I almost feel a bit bad for the guy. We took him out of Napoli just before Napoli won their first Scudetto in 30-odd years. He's come to Chelsea, had a kind of a miserable time for most of the year. Then by the end, as he was kind of finding a little bit of form, got injured. And then didn't really have a chance to kind of prove, am I good enough, am I not, towards the end. And now he's gone already. So it's a bit harsh, but at the same time, I also understand, like I say, if the guy was on over 300k a week, if that was actually true, I do kind of understand why the decision kind of had to be made in a way. I just still don't understand how we ever gave him that much money last year.
I think he's almost a victim of not our overspending, but kind of the transitional period we had last season. I think he was always a top quality center back. I think we saw glimpses of it this season, and he gave us arguably one of our best moments of the season with that volley against Spurs, where I never exploded like that in my life for a goal. So I think it's just very unfortunate, giving him the wages as well, which as you've pointed out, if they were true, it would make sense to move him on. I think. For next season, if we look at our center back options, if we have around those 4, maybe 4.5 with one of the wing backs as well in a season where we don't have European football to compete in, I think that's not that bad. I think we might, if we want to, get a fifth one in, depends on what Chalobah does. But I think I've always appreciated Koulibaly. I always appreciate the fact that he called John Terry last season. I think he was one of the few players who's like a settled, very very good, nigh on world class player. And I think we need to be careful that we don't have too young of a back four next season. We still have those. We still have Thiago Silva, of course, but it always helps having those leaders. But I think it's almost as if it wasn't meant to be with Koulibaly, and I think he hasn't. He's always come in, done his best, worked hard, been very unfortunate. So I think it's good for him. He gets to look after his family for generations now with the Saudi money, and I think very good for us as well. I think if we're not breaking even, I can't remember. At least we get a decent fee for him. Maybe it would have made sense for him to go to Inter, but in the end of the day, he's going to get a very good pay package. We're going to get some money for him as well. So from now on, all sides, even though it wasn't meant to be, it looks like a win-win for us.
There you go. No, fair play. At the end of the day, all I can say is all the best to him, really. With his wages, with, how his age as well, he wasn't really going to go many other places, that he would have been happy with, other than probably return to Napoli, and they probably can't afford that, let alone giving him even remotely the same wages as us. I thank him for his efforts, but it's very disappointing. It's very disappointing, and he's almost a little bit lucky that we've had transfers like Lukaku happen and Winston Bogarde, that we're not talking about him as the worst signing in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, it didn't exactly go well. Let's just get to the next one. I guess let's do Hakim Ziyech. Understand from Fabrizio Romano again. Understand Al Nassr have reached a full verbal agreement with Hakim Ziyech to join the club. Personal terms agreed. Ziyech will sign until 2026 if all goes to plan. Agreement reached also with Chelsea, waiting to prepare, check, then contract. Here we go for the Moroccan. This time I'll start with you, Bertram. Obviously, what's kind of a bit weird, crazy, whatever way you want to put it, for Hakim Ziyech is that 6 months ago, he was about to go to PSG. Now, it was supposedly going to be a loan for 6 months, so who knows, he might have gone to Saudi Arabia right now anyway. But it's kind of crazy how you go from nearly joining PSG to going to Saudi Arabia. Now, he's going to play with Cristiano Ronaldo, fair enough, but yeah, he's going to give us the least money of all these three transfers. We'll talk about transfer fees of these three in a minute. But yeah, it's another one where I'm like, he should have gone a long time ago, arguably last summer. the latest last January, didn't happen. Then he got way too much game time since then. Even though, to be fair, whenever he did get game time, especially off the bench, it's not like he looked worse than any of the other players. I will say that. He's not an awful player. We just didn't really find a way to make him work. Now we still certainly lost the best left foot at the club. We still just lost by letting him go. That's without a shadow of a doubt. But unfortunately, that left foot was by far his biggest strength, and there wasn't so many others. That was kind of the issue with Hakim Ziyech. As great as that left foot was, and as maybe his intensity in terms of trying to press and stuff was, sometimes the attitude, sometimes the way he tried to play with what is necessary for a club like Chelsea, like when clubs constantly sit back and then they're threat from the counter, and you try to risk passes all the time, which is on the one hand okay, but on the other hand, if you give the ball away so many times and then you're constantly getting countered, that obviously stops you being able to sustain pressure. So there has been some issues with it. In hindsight, certainly not a signing that's worked out. Obviously lasted a lot longer than Koulibaly did, but obviously another victim, in my opinion, of constant managerial changes, in my opinion. Not saying that if, for example, Lampard, who obviously signed him, ever stayed longer term, it would have been much better. But especially players that come in like this, it can't be useful when you're constantly changing managers. But at the same time, hey, he needed to go. It's another guy with relatively high wages that's off the books. For us, it's a good thing because he was one of those players that needed to be part of the clear out, wasn't he?
Well, he was, and I think we did see glimpses. I kind of almost cheered him staying as well, because it might have been more hope than what I was thinking. Because I think, as you touched upon, he has one of the best left foots at the club. He has one of the best techniques as well. Someone in the chat mentioned the goal against Spurs last season, which was still one of the best goals I've seen a score in my time as a fan. It couldn't have been any more in the corner. I think he was one of those transfers. He was almost the one we got over that summer window that I was the most excited about, because you'd seen some of the things he'd done at Ajax. That pass against Bayern as well. It's not many people can do that, but in the end, you can just say it hasn't worked out. And I think Chelsea is one of those teams that it's very difficult for, unless your name is Eden Hazard, for an offensive an offensive player to just stand out and not be part of a collective, because of the managers that we've had. The Champions League triumph came mostly because of our defensive play and ourselves in transition, rather than someone of his caliber, for example. So I'm pretty sad that it never worked out. I think he has had his moments. I'm happy he was able to win the Champions League as well, but I think the same goes for Koulibaly. It was meant to be. We needed to shift him on, saved his wages, and he's able to get a good pay packet as well. Not that I doubt he wasn't on decent wages for us as well, but I think it's just important for us to get this clear out, get a fee for him, and move him on. And I think we thank him for his services, but what couldn't have been with a player like Hakim Ziyech and the level that he'd shown in glimpses, but unfortunately not consistently enough.
No, absolutely. Pice, similar questions to you, really. A player that has to go, a player that there was certainly more in it than we ever saw for Chelsea, but unfortunately that's a bit of a trend at Chelsea, that most players we sign, they are better than what they show for our club, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, it's good that he's gone, right?
Yeah, no, Ziyech was probably one of the first ones I would, wanted out the door, to be honest with you. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say, to be honest. Like, we've known he's going to be leaving for ages. But again, it was another one where I thought it might be quite hard. Like, we might have to do a loan deal or an obligation, with an obligation. But, we're hardly even, I think it's like 8 million or 10 million or something really cheap for him. Like, he's definitely worth more than that. Let's be honest. He is a good player, but he just doesn't fit the Premier League. And, another one bites the dust in the sales clear out, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, there's not that much more to add. We God knows how many times we've spoken about that Hakim Ziyech needs to leave on here. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, let's just get to the next one of these guys that are moving out to Saudi Arabia before we talk about potential cheating allegations and all sorts of other business. Edouard Mendy is the next one. Understand Chelsea have reached a full verbal agreement with Saudi's Al Ahly to sell Edouard Mendy. Mendy agreed personal terms with Al Ahly on a 3-year deal, as revealed last week. Contracts to be checked, then signed if all goes to plan. Here we go for the Senegalese. It's a difficult one. I'll start with you on this one, Pice. There's still a lot of fans that are like, that would rather have sold Kepa than Mendy. There was obviously a lot of fans that would have liked to sell both. It's still an interesting one, isn't it? And I personally find it weird as well, because Mendy's peak has certainly been far superior to anything Kepa has ever shown us. But the problem was that peak was so short that it just kind of put you off, because I'm like, at least that's what happened to me, because I'm like, how can you be so good for that kind of period, but then tail off so hard? Like, it wasn't even like a slow downward spiral. It was like he went to the AFCON, won the AFCON, and it's like someone drugged him and he was half the play after that. Like, I genuinely don't understand. Like, obviously we can even talk about Champions League exit against Real Madrid under Thomas Tuchel, like how he cost us in both legs to some extent. Like, the fact that obviously modern football, you want your goalkeeper to be able to play out with his feet, which, yes, some managers maybe even overvalue that kind of trait, I guess. But that was still always his biggest issue, I felt. And what my issue was, and I thought Chelsea fans always kind of overpraised Mendy for certain things purely because Kepa was bad at certain things. Like, I never thought Mendy was particularly great at command in the box, other than when in the super height of his purple patch. But in general, I don't think he claimed corners that well. He was never that good at punching crosses away, corners away, free kicks away. Like, we still had plenty of issues conceding from set pieces while we had Mendy, other than in that 6 months from after Tuchel trying until we won the Champions League. After that, it was even an issue with him. But at the same time, I also sit here, I'm like, how can you have been that good? And how can we know for 1,000,000% that you wouldn't have been this good again? Because there's very few goalkeepers better than that Mendy that we had in our Champions League run, and also around that in the league and around that after that. Like, there's very few goalkeepers that are off that level. So it's a frustrating one, but at the same time, hey, was not here for a long time, but he was here for a sure as hell of a good time. I mean, like, won everything in that period. I say everything, didn't win the league, but won a lot of things also for him on international duty as well, of course. So I thank him for his efforts. I thank him for his contribution. Yeah, it's still weird to me that for years it was talked about, oh, yeah, we're trying to sell Kepa. All of a sudden, Kepa is still staying and Mendy's gone. It's crazy in a way, but at the same time, one of them had to go. And if he was easier to find somewhere to go to, with Saudi Arabia, him being Muslim, we'll talk about that in a minute as well. I guess it makes sense that way. What are you saying about that one, Pies? How do you view this? Like, I think we all agree that his peak was better than anything we've ever seen from Kepa, but it still feels like, Kepa, when he was on the bench, was still involved. When Mendy was on the bench, you're like, Lampard is like, he's still not even really fit. I'm like, why is he on the bench then? Like, it just never really felt like it worked once he lost his spot to me.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Just first off, it makes sense in terms of going to Saudi, obviously, him being Muslim and that type of thing. And in some ways, I'm glad that he's gone there and not to like another European team, because I know he's not young, but again, it does still like it would still scare me a little bit, the fact that like we've seen him be the best goalkeeper in the world. Like, he won the UEFA Goalkeeper of the Year. We've seen him, he was the best goalkeeper in the world. He was absolutely ridiculous. And then he just had that complete fall off the cliff drop off. And it's like, how can you go? Like, it's one of the most like unexplained, like, you could even say it's like one of the most unexplained like heights towards his career as well. Getting to the top, like how late on he came into his career, and how he went from Rennes straight to Chelsea and just winning the Champions League and all that, and then dropping off. It's just, yeah, it's unexplainable, to be honest with you. I don't know whether he lost motivation after, winning all those trophies. It didn't seem like it, on the face of it. But again, I think this one had to be done. I do think the modern goalkeeper has to be really good with his feet, and he's just not. He's just not. And I think he's got worse and worse and worse with his feet. Because I actually remember someone doing there was actually a debate about this quite a few months ago, before last season. Someone said, I remember someone saying on Twitter, like, unpopular take, but I think Mendy's quite bad with the ball. And I remember someone making a comment just to disprove him. And now no one can, that's not even a debate anymore. Everyone's like, yeah, he's terrible with the ball. People, like, some people saw it and some people didn't. People were like, no, he's all right. Like, so I think he's just gone even downhill on that front as well. So yeah, I think we had to sell him. The fee, I don't think it's been confirmed yet, but I think it'll be like 10, 15 million. Again, it's extremely cheap, but
To be fair, we bought him for very cheap as well, didn't we?
We did, but again, like, and this goes towards my whole like, you know, are we cheating Saudi debate rubbish? Like, I'm actually writing an article on it as well because I just want to like put the facts out there. Like, if you actually think about it, right, Mendy's won the Champions League, he's won all these individual accolades, and yet we're selling him for a loss. Like, if we was really cheating, I'm sure we could convince the Saudis, like, oh, look, you know, he's won. Look at his achievements here. Yeah, you can give us profit. Like, no, we're losing money. Like, so, you know, I'm not complaining. I wanted this. I wanted, you know, people flying out the door. So this is, you know, I can't complain now. On the face of it, and I said on the face of it, some of these fees might look cheap. When we sell Pulisic, might look cheap. Kovacic for me, cheap. You know, Mount, he's probably cheap, you know, but it is what it is. It is what it is. We need to clear out. This is the only way to do it. We can't sit here and negotiate forever. Just get them out, you know. It's simple as that.
Yeah, there you go. I think it's an interesting point. I think it almost goes back to what me and Mo tried to highlight a few weeks ago on a stream when we were talking about how Chelsea just failed to improve anyone. And Edouard Mendy is one of them. Like, yeah, you can be as a player not that good with your feet, but how is it? He was at Chelsea Football Club. How is it that he couldn't get better? You know, like he's still a professional footballer. All he does every day is go to football training. How is it that he arguably got worse? Like everyone can get a bit better at things. How is it that he looked to get worse and worse and worse with the ball at his feet? Like that's just another one of those things where I sometimes don't understand what happens at Chelsea. I don't know if it's this difference between goalkeeper, you know, training as that goalkeeper group and then the outfield group. I don't know. It's just so weird. Like this is another thing that, you know, goalkeepers being good with the ball at their feet is great and everything, but it doesn't just have to be a born talent. Like I say, you can improve things. Like Frank Lampard wasn't the best shooter of the ball when he joined Chelsea, but he became that by working. It wasn't necessarily born as the most talented player of all time, but he managed to work his way into being one of the best players and the best player this club has ever had in the grand scheme of things. Maybe not most talented, but best. And with Mendy, it's just, and I'm not even going to put any of this blame on him, but it's just strange. It's just strange to me. Shout out T-Spot, by the way. Shout out H. Nacko for joining as well. Bertram, I'll come to you. You are obviously a goalkeeper yourself. I think in the division that you played in, you guys actually won the league. So shout out to you guys. Well done. Where do you stand on all of this? Kepa now the one that's staying, Kepa potentially even staying as number one, Mendy the one that's leaving and that has left. And also, where do you stand on this whole being great and then getting worse? Like it's very strange, all, isn't it?
Well, the way I look at it is very happy for him. I think the rise he's had, we're all very familiar with it. He came from the youth ranks. He almost didn't have anything to do. Then he came to Rennes, and from there he signed with us. And then he peaked, and it's not just a peak. He was brilliant. I almost think his best time for us were the 6 months after we won the Champions League, where he was the start of that season under Tuchel. He was outstanding. He was amazing. But I think there are as it looks right now, he's achieved pretty much everything he could. Won the Super Cup, the Club World Cup. His personal accolade as well. We've all seen the photo with Tuchel, the midfielders, him as well. And now he can go and get a very big pay packet, and I'm very happy for him, and I think he deserves it. But as things look right now, he isn't the best goalkeeper out of a football club, and even though people might disagree, Kepa is right now, for my money. And I think the decline we've seen, it can come down to a lot of things we obviously don't know. For my money, I think it's a combination of the fact that he is getting older. It does have an effect, even though they love to tell us goalkeepers that we don't do anything. It is quite tough. It can also be the fact, we lost Peter Cech from the takeover, someone he was very close with, the person who almost scouted him per se, signed him over, was very close towards him. Coaching staff as well, new goalkeeper trainer. But I also think, when you're talking about the build-up, with his feet, he hasn't always been the best goalkeeper building with his feet, but it also has had an effect, especially this season, that when we've been building up through a 4-back system, which we tried under Potter, and he wasn't, we kind of gravitated towards someone else. It is easier for a goalkeeper to build up and be better with your feet when you have 3 central defenders ahead of you and 2 wingbacks out wide than having 4, And it's also the way we've impressed is different. We had better defenders last season when we were under him. Now we have slightly worse defenders. Midfield as well isn't as good. Wasn't very press resistant. So I think all these things combined to just see that he isn't at the level that he should be. But I think personally, for my money, he was very good. He was very, very, very good. We were lucky to have him. Again, one of these cheap signings that paid off. But it is time to move on. And I think if we'd sold one of our 2 starting goalkeepers, I think this is definitely the move. And now, we'll get into it later. But I don't really think I should. Kepa should be our starter idealistically. But if we can't find anything else, it is what it is. Still a decent goalkeeper.
Yeah, there you go. I do agree with that. I mean, Poch, just quickly, I'll keep Mendy up on screen for now because I don't have it ready. The whole that Poch, is happy to work with Kepa as the number 1 goalkeeper and also thinks that him with his goalkeeping coaches can take Kepa to the next level. I know you're not a big fan, or not the biggest fan, shall I say, of Kepa Pais, but still, what do you make of that? Are you in a position where you're like, well, we need to sign a lot of players, address a lot of things again, even though we've signed so many players over the last 2 transfer windows already? If you can't get Onana right now, if you can't get Mignon right now, maybe it is just smarter to wait another year. Maybe it's smarter to have Kepa for another year rather than buying another stopgap option, which isn't going to change anything because Kepa is, going into the last 2 years of his contract. Where you're like, well, even if we can't get rid of him, eventually he will just be gone. If we sign a new stopgap option, if we then can't get rid of those guys again either, then that's just a new problem. While just wait for the right time. Sometimes in football, like realistically, we're not going to fight for the title next year. Yes, Kepa, I agree, isn't a good enough goalkeeper to win you the Premier League. But he has proven twice already before that he is a good enough goalkeeper to get top 4. So for what our main objective is next season, he has proven that he is good enough for that to happen with him as the main goalkeeper. So for me, it's like, if you can't get one that's significantly better than him, just don't. And that I've held that opinion since the first rumor started in like March or April. I'm like, what do I do with Raya? What do I do with Sanchez? What do I do with, in my opinion, even Diogo Costa, even though some people would disagree with that statement. Even Onana, I'm a little bit on the fence. I'm like, is he really that much better than Kepa? Or does he just have a bit of a purple patch because he was banned for a year and now, just played well for Inter? But it's also Inter. Inter are defensively good. Most goalkeepers will look pretty decent for Inter. Do you know what I mean? Like Handanovic looked great, but, was Handanovic ever the greatest goalkeeper in the world? No, but he still always looked good for Inter. So what do you make of this, that if Kepa does end up staying as the number 1 goalkeeper? Or do you expect us to sign a player like Mamadashvili, for example, the Georgian goalkeeper from Valencia, maybe who initially comes as a backup, but maybe fights his way into being the first choice? How do you see that one, Pais?
Yeah, I think what you said about the Valencia goalkeeper, I think he could end up being, the number 1, not like next season, but like the season after that. And then maybe Sonina comes in as the backup and then you sell Kepa. But yeah, I'll be a bit disappointed if we do keep Kepa as number 1 personally. I think, especially with the sales that we're getting in, I mean, fair enough. If we buy like a top striker as well as Jackson and we want Caicedo as well, then, maybe
and we need another midfielder. Let's not forget.
Yeah, and another midfielder. Then I would say, yeah, okay, keep Kepa. I don't think. I mean, of course we could do it, but maybe it wouldn't be the wisest thing just to go like all out on every single area. But if we don't get a strike on top of Jackson, I think that leaves plenty of money in my opinion to get a top class number 1, whether that be a Nana or someone like that, because I don't rate Kepa as highly as you. I think he's a bit like Havertz. I think he's one that's like we just put faith in him every season and they let us down. So I don't know.
But I don't think you can say Kepa let us down this season.
He made a lot of mistakes. Like, he did better than previous season, but he still made quite a lot of mistakes. Like,
but I don't think you can name me a single goalkeeper in the Premier League that hasn't. That's like, even Alisson has made mistakes that cost goals. Edison has made mistakes that cost goals.
Yeah,
like, Ramsdale has made mistakes that cost goals. Every goalkeeper does that. I know we were lucky with having Petr Cech and Courtois, but there's very few Petr Cechs and Courtois that exist, especially at the same time.
No, Kepa for me is not on that level of the other.
No, of course not. And I'm not by any means trying to say that he is. And I'm also not saying he's as good as Alisson or as good as Edison. No, of course I'm not. But I'm just saying, people say, he cost us some points on a few occasions. I'm like, that's true. But every goalkeeper does that every now and again. It's just part of being a goalkeeper.
Is it every now and again, or is it consistent?
A mistake costs a goal. If Kovacic makes a mistake, if Jorginho made a mistake, if Enzo makes a mistake, it doesn't cost a goal. There's a defender behind him who can clean up. If Kepa makes a mistake, it's a goal. Like, that's part of being a goalkeeper, unfortunately. But that's why it's always a bit. I'm always a bit careful with overdoing it on a few mistakes for goalies. But hey,
it's been consistent over 3 seasons or however long he's been here, though. Like, he's
no, that's true. But this season, I don't know if he finished the season on the highest save percentage. I'm not sure about that. But he certainly did really well in that sense. So, like, you can't just say he was bad this season if he has one of the highest, if not the highest save percentage. Like, that's like, it just doesn't work that way, I guess. But enough about that. At the end of the day, we'll just have to wait and see how it goes anyway. Mo, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it very much. You were ill the last few days, so I hope you're okay talking on it. Appreciate it. Rather than going into pure details of Mendy now, we already spoke about Koulibaly, Ziyech, and Mendy. So maybe as what I'll ask you is as a bit more of an overall statement before we get into, are we cheating? Are you happy with these guys going out to Saudi Arabia? Obviously, big wages off the books, players off the books. We needed a fire sale. We needed a clear out. It's not happening. It's crazy that it's all happening in one day, but it's all happening. So you happy with that?
100%. I think any Chelsea fan that realizes obviously what sort of business we have ahead of us in terms of incomings, and we needed these outgoings to happen as soon as possible. Ideally on a favorable scenario where hopefully we don't waste too much time trying to get these outgoings done. The fact that it's been done before July the 1st for me is such a positive thing. And it lets me know that behind the scenes, there's a lot happening that we may not realize. Some of this stuff only started to come into the forefront in the last week or so. We'd been hearing like murmurings, but it wasn't really picking up as much as we'd liked. Suddenly now, in one day, we have all of these announcements. So it's a very positive thing from that perspective. And just to make the point about like obviously the individuals that have actually left, Ziyech, I think, unfortunately, it didn't look like he could have turned a positive note and turned his time at Chelsea around. For me, that was very positive. Koulibaly, I feel sorry for. And this is one of our worst seasons as Chelsea Football Club. He's obviously a player that is experienced, that we wanted a lot from in terms of what sort of guidance he was going to give us. He didn't really perform up to standards, but also the whole club didn't. And I feel like it's unfortunate that it was only a year and then we've basically sent him packing. But at the end of the day, it's not like someone's holding a gun to his head. He has accepted this move and he's wanted to go there as well. And he's getting considerable money for that too. So it's all positive from that side. Mendy is an interesting one because Mendy is a goalkeeper that I feel like this situation with Kepa that we were speaking about a second ago, Mendy had one moment where obviously, unfortunately, his form just took a real bad dip. He was then out of favor. Kepa was brought back in. And I feel like Mendy just was not really given another look in again. And obviously the contract negotiation with Chelsea didn't work out. So it meant the writing was always on the wall for him to leave the club. And I personally feel exactly like the way Pice does about the situation. It's disappointing to hear that we're going to go in with Kepa again because he doesn't instill me with the greatest of confidence. But we have to admit, when it comes to our defense, when it comes to our structure as a team collectively, we make far too many errors that I feel like we'd make a lot of goalkeepers look really bad right now. So that's one of the things that I'd like us to address. Collectively, there's a lot more better we can do with the errors that we make. Kepa for one more year, if we address other key areas of the team, I'm okay to put up with that. And I think it seems like Pochettino's pretty much come to that same conclusion. But yeah, I don't think he's had the worst season. I actually think this has been one of his positive seasons. Coming off our worst season, he's actually been a bright spark in that sense, where a lot of the times I've been quite happy with him. But like Pice has already said, man, I don't feel confident. If a shot is taken at him, more times than not, he saves when I don't expect him to save, and he doesn't save the things I expect him to save. So it's a bit of a strange one just from that perspective.
Yeah, no, and I hear that. Like I say, my counter argument is the goalkeepers we're linked to, other than Maignan, which goalkeeper I wouldn't feel any more confidence from those. And like, I agree that Kepa doesn't give me enough confidence, but neither would Raya, neither would Sanchez, neither would Joe Costa, neither would...
Why though? Why would you not? Is it because you just don't know them, or is it like...
Because of what I've seen of them, and they don't look like a better goalkeeper than Kepa to me. Simple as that.
Who? Onana? Are you saying Onana is not a better keeper?
No, Onana is where I'm not sure, because I'm like, I've seen Onana be good, but I've seen Onana also be just all right. You know, where I'm like, okay, I'm not saying you're worse than Kepa, but how much better than Kepa are you realistically? Like that's why I said better with his feet, sure, but I also think people love to underestimate how good Kepa is with his feet. That's another thing they just love to forget when talking about Kepa. But hey, enough Kepa talk. Let's get into these cheating allegations, because it's a little bit crazy. This is from 2 days ago in the evening. Breaking European rivals of Chelsea and Wolves, because they sold Ruben Neves for 56 million. Like, maybe we should just look at Wolves and not us. 56 million for Ruben Neves, really? But anyway, according for fair market investigation into Saudi Arabia's dramatic haul of big money signings, I just like even this statement, like whoever these clubs are, they that want that. I'm like, who works for you? And do any of you own a brain? Because how can you say fair market when we're selling half of these players for undervalue? Like, you can maybe argue that they're getting paid too many wages, but that's nothing to do with Chelsea. That's to do with those players and to do with Saudi Arabia. You can question that all you want, fair enough. But how can you say fair market investigation? Sorry, we're getting 7 million apparently for Ziyech. We're getting 10 million, maybe 15 for Mendy. A goalkeeper that 2 years ago won the best goalkeeper in the world, and you're questioning fair market. Pais, I want to start with you, even though Mo and Bertram hasn't spoken in a minute, but I want to start with you because I feel like you will have the most knowledge on this topic, because I didn't have the time over the last few days to read up on everything in detail. But obviously this has all started essentially because the PIF, the Saudi, whatever it stands for really, has part investment or has part of their money managed by Clear Lake Capital, who, of course, Clear Lake Capital are the majority shareholders of Chelsea Football Club, owning 60% of Chelsea Football Club. But what I just find so baffling is Clear Lake Capital handle $78 billion. 78 billion. Like, do you know how much money that is? That is like, you know how many, like, if you wanted to deep it, you would probably find that Clear Lake Capital has to do with some sort of money from everyone. Like, you know, if you went into detail, they probably have something to do with everywhere. Do you know what I mean? If you're like, in terms of being what's the right word for them? Like what do you define Clear Lake Capital as a company again? Like a
private equity, isn't it?
Sorry?
Private equity.
Investment firm?
But yeah, investment firm, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Like, they handle so much money. What has a few million of the Saudis being controlled by Clear Lake Capital? That's nothing to do with Chelsea. The only benefit it maybe gave us is having existing relationships, which maybe allowed us to make these deals happen. But I think what so many people just forget about and underestimate is the players they're getting, they're all Muslim players. Now, Callum Hudson-Odoi has also 2 offers, but no one knows whether Callum Hudson-Odoi is willing to go. Lukaku, he's not willing to go. So you can't exactly say, oh, we're just cheating everyone, because otherwise Lukaku would be in Saudi Arabia already, as much as we are trying to get him there. But yeah, to me, it's actually hilarious. First of all, I'm very happy. Do your fair market investigations. Do it. I guarantee you will find out nothing's wrong with it. I absolutely guarantee it. And I also guarantee that all this is happening, and not Alex Goldberg, Mark Goldbridge put it really well. It's just other clubs being scared because we just keep finding loopholes. And even though we find loads of loopholes last year, and no, this is even the wrong word. This isn't even a loophole. We did nothing. We did nothing wrong. There was just a market that wants players. We are trying to sell a lot of players. So obviously, they might want to sign a lot of our players. Some of these players are nearing the end of their career. They're on high wages. They're all Muslim. Well, not all of them, but these players, these 3 specific ones. I just don't understand how anyone came up with, oh, we're cheating. And to be honest, I find it kind of hilarious. But, I mean, Pais, if you have any more in terms of facts or info to put on it, please do. But I just find it utterly hilarious. And yeah, like Lukey here put it in chat. Gary Neville. Gary Neville is one of the biggest hypocrites football has ever seen. Like, my guy loves a moral high ground, but had no problem taking all the money from Qatar. Had no problem, like, with hoping that Qatar invest in Manchester United, or, you know, paying way over the top for all sorts of business to get Salford up the football table. Like, no, that's absolutely fine. But as soon as it's not Man United, it's not Gary Neville himself, or it's not Salford, then it's a problem. Like, it's just ridiculous. Newcastle just signing Tonali for 70 million, right? Actual Saudi money, but it's a problem when we sell players to Saudi Arabia. It's just, what? It's just baffling. It's just absolutely baffling. And that so many people jumped on this now. Now, on the one hand, I understand it. Chelsea is where the clicks come from. And maybe more so than all the others, because otherwise, why would they constantly be talking about us? But it just baffles me, especially European rivals of Chelsea. Like, what? Like, it's crazy. I mean, here it says it anyway. There's nothing to it. But what would you say about it, Pice, before I go to the other boys?
As I said earlier, I'm writing an article on it because I want to go fully in depth on everything, why it just doesn't make sense. But, you know, in terms of like obviously us cheating, why it just doesn't make sense. I mean, there's literally the argument, you know, the conspiracy theorist argument is literally, okay, PIF, you know, have invested with Clearlake Capital, and also the PIF did they invested with one of Todd Bowley's companies in some like luxury hotel thing, and people are like, oh look, you know, they have connections, they can't do this. Like, no,
there's only a couple of. Is there even 100 billionaires in the world? I don't know how many.
It's hilarious.
There's only so many. Of course, these lot are all going to know each other.
Yeah, there's so many reasons why it just doesn't make sense. Like, first off, like, The Athletic did an article on this as well. It's where I got some of the knowledge from. So essentially, every deal that's worth more than, I think it's £1 million, has to be checked for like fair market value, and it goes through like the Premier League. So all of these deals will be individually checked anyway in terms of finances. That's one. Number two, why the hell would Todd Bowley and Igbali and Lewis want to get into an investigation where it could hurt future business relationships? Because at the end of the day, as much as they might be spending, their end goal is to double, triple the value of what they bought it from. They want to make money. So if Chelsea get investigated in year 2 of their ownership, right, or season 2 or whatever their ownership, that's gonna and we're like proved of wrongdoing. If that happens, they're screwed for future relationships. George Mendes won't want to go near us. Any of these guys won't want to go near us. Sponsorships won't want to go near us. So why the hell would we do it?
I mean, to be honest, sponsors already don't want to go near us.
Exactly. So it just doesn't make any sense if we were, convicted of doing any wrongdoing. So, you know, there's other reasons as well that I've written about. I can't remember off the top of my head, but PIF also, they're majority owners of Newcastle, right? Why the hell would they not just go and help Newcastle, their own club? Why would they want to help Chelsea, who they're
because of a couple of million. You know how little money a couple of million is for the PIF? Like, I was going to say they wipe their ass with that. They don't even wipe their ass with it. They use it as fucking rubbing their shoes when they come home. Do you know what I mean? Like, a couple of million is nothing to these people.
Yeah, honestly, it's just ridiculous. Like look at the players we're selling as well. Like, you know, as you said, Mendy, Ziyech, Koulibaly, 3 of the biggest Muslim athletes in the world, right? They just are, you know, they have massive following. They play for a massive club, you know, and unfortunately, unfortunately for the rivals, it's just a case of this is how Mark Goldbridge put it. He said, you know, one man's crap is another man's gold. You know, it's as simple as that. You know, Kai
Havertz is the example of that.
they are attractive with the Saudi league. You know, so at the end of the day, it just doesn't make sense for us to be cheating. And Bowley, has built a lot of relationships. There's a reason why Bowley and Barley are billionaires, right? It's not. Obviously, subject knowledge helps, of course. They ain't going to be able to do, you know, their companies and stuff without knowledge, of course. But the saying applies to this situation. I think the saying of like, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? Bowley has managed to meet the Saudis last week, right? And they probably talked about, you know, Chelsea, because obviously, you know, this came of it. But they you know, that happened because Bowley's business partner, who he chose to go with, Bedanik Barley, you know, has existing relationships with the Saudis. So, you know, people are so funny. They're so in denial. They think that, you know, Bowley and that didn't think of all these things before they bought Chelsea. They think that they didn't, you know, think through thoroughly what sort of relationships and that they want to gain. Like, these are billionaires, guys. Like, some people just need to wake up.
What do people think if Jim Ratcliffe was to buy Manchester United? Do people think he's not going to use his relations in France now that he's already
honestly, billionaires' minds are so far. Like, there's a reason why they're so successful. That's all I'll say. And you know, look what he did in the first summer, right? You remember that meeting he held? He scheduled a meeting with 19 other Premier League executives. You know, remember that meeting? He had that dinner. You know, he to gain relationships and stuff with the Premier League executives, and that was like came out to be like one of the main reasons we signed Cucurella at the time, right? Because I think he spoke to Paul Barber, was it, from Brighton, and that came from that meeting. Look, he's just ahead of the curve on these things. I'm sorry that your owner is not as smart as ours. Like, get over it, stop crying, Gary Neville is just pathetic, and that's that. Look what he did with George Mendes as well. Do you think he knew football? Do you think he knew who George Mendes was personally? No, he went out and met him. He went out and met the Saudis. Like, it's just, oh mate, it's so dumb, honestly. But it is hilarious. It's hilarious. It's what you said. It's funny, and the more people that cry about it, you know, it's just brilliant. It's brilliant. This is where we want to be. We love this sort of stuff. Keep crying.
Exactly. And just to touch on this comment by Thomas Basie, and by the way, Swiss Daniel, I hope you're still here. I will get to your super chat. I just wanted to actually I just want to finish that whole Saudi topic and bring up your super chat. But Thomas Basie says the conspiracy is that they can sell a few players low because they will make it up in nefarious ways with the Saudis. But this is the ridiculous bit. This is pure speculation. This is just, there's no way Chelsea would agree to sell these players for this little money. So there has to be something outrageous going on. You could make that debate for every sale ever. Like, every player that goes for a little less money than people think makes sense, there's got to be something dodgy going on. You know, just because it's the Saudis and just because it's Chelsea, and even if the Saudis do dodgy things, like someone said it higher above here, no organization or federation is big enough to investigate PIF. That might be the case, Mick, but that's not our problem. We're talking about Chelsea, and fact of the matter is, it has nothing to do with Chelsea because they can investigate us because that's what they need to investigate. If Saudi are doing different things, Saudi, yes, they're under the FIFA branch, but they have nothing to do with UEFA, so they're far away from us. This is a completely separate thing, and I mean, if in months, years, whatever time, it comes out that we made money from the Saudis in those nefarious ways that Thomas is talking about, then that will be looked into. I'm 100% sure of it. But we can't just sit here and say, you lot are selling players for cheaper than you should to places where we wouldn't expect you to sell them to. So now that means some dodges going on. That's not how it works. You can't just speculate wrongdoings into existence and then state them as a matter of fact. It's just ridiculous behavior, in my opinion. Utterly ridiculous. Bacham, I'll go to you next because you haven't spoken in a hot minute. Yes, Swiss Daniel, I will get to it, my friend. I will get to it. But Bacham, where do you stand on all of this? Like, it's just, I just ask you for your opinion because I've said my piece already, but it's just silly.
Yeah, well, as I said before, I don't mind us being hated, but what I do mind is us being, almost misjudged in a way, accused of things, because it is annoying having to always look at, if you go on Twitter, having to look at these Gary Neville quotes and having to go on Instagram and finding them as well. And there's a guy, I won't say who he is, but all these people who are just they have to investigate him, all these Arsenal fans and stuff like this. It's really annoying because it's not true, and I can understand the jealousy point of view, but it isn't like we're selling Mendy. You touched upon before that he's 2 years ago he was the UEFA best goalkeeper. It's not like we're selling him for like 50 mil now because he is getting on a bit. We're selling these guys for losses, so it's just true business in my opinion, and it's also a bit of luck. The Saudis deciding to branch out their football league system now. It coincides with us having players, Middle Eastern players with maybe Muslim beliefs as well, who are able to flock on. But I find it almost just as annoying as it is funny in a sense as well, because we always have to hear all these things from these pundits, and it's clear that they haven't done their due diligence. They haven't, as Pai says, they haven't done any research, they haven't done anything like this. They just, okay, look, Chelsea are buying or the Saudis are buying up some of Chelsea's players. Oh, look, the Saudis are invested in Clear Lake Capital. Of course they are. It's $75 billion that you touched upon earlier. Of course, the Middle East, it's a hub of money because of the oil industry. So of course they're going to have some money tied up with large holding companies in the US. So it's almost just it's a bit tiring, if I'm honest. And you can really see through who is able to like Mark Goldbridge, who has come into some flack because who he is, but very very clear, very seen through. Okay, this might be jealousy, not the fact that there's this massive conspiracy that Chelsea are heading because people are desperate to hate us again, and it's also very funny to see how we've come from all these owners are clueless, they don't know what they're talking about, so now we're these criminal masterminds who have
they were laughing at us how stupid we all are, and now they're all scared of us because of how smart we are. Like, what is it then?
Exactly. But I think we just right now, if we have been, we are we are quite massive if we're honest with ourselves. So they will, if there hasn't been any wrongdoing, they will investigate us for it. But it's also impressive to see that, as you touched upon earlier, we're these are like allegations. He's like, oh, there could be something nefarious going, instead of looking at the 115 cases that Manchester City have been, have been proved to have breached. How far that's gone away. So I think it's a bit tiring, but it's good again being hated and feared, other than almost having sympathy, because we're sort of that dog shit at playing football. So those are my 2 cents.
There you go. I mean, hey, at least some things never change. In 2005, they said we're ruining football. In 2023, with different owners, they're still saying we're ruining football. Some things.
Can I touch on something quickly as well?
Go on.
We come back to them again, but these Arsenal fans, they're really starting to annoy me. But they're talking about how we're selling all these players to Saudi, while they almost, they're going to be generating more money from Saudi by selling Thomas Partey for like 40 mil, and we're not.
And let's not even talk about Thomas Partey in too much detail, because we'll be in trouble.
Exactly.
Then, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Firstly, they're going to give us more money than Saudi for a player. Secondly, they're going to be receiving more money from the Saudi government as well from transfers. So. And
worst player, in my opinion.
exactly. And they're, the Saudis are as well. They're massive investors in Kroenke's company, so they should probably pipe down a little bit, if we're honest with ourselves.
Absolutely. Mo, sorry it took a minute. I'll come back to you on it. I know you have a lot to say on all of this topic, but where do you stand on all of this? Like, obviously a lot's been said already, so I assume you're going to echo a lot of that's been said, but still. Well, what's your take on all of this? And by the way, I do want to give a shout out to Marco, which is much as he sometimes is a little bit of a, as everyone is, biased towards his own club. He does try to keep unbiased when necessary with statements like this, and I couldn't agree more with him. It's just people being jealous, people being scared, people hope that we would be in trouble, and now we found a way to not be, and they're all like, there has to be something dodgy going on because they need us to be in trouble. That's all it is.
It's interesting because, to me, what this highlights is the hypocrisy that exists in Western society, where we like to point at everyone else where they're doing something wrong, and we pretend that we're these perfect people on this side of society. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of, like, these are just basically people that are jealous that they are not in a position to be able to sell the players that they don't want at their club to these same people. And the fact that we're utilizing the relationships we have and present it to these people and said, hey, these are players that we're interested in selling. Would you be interested? And deals came from that. Shouldn't be a conversation we need to justify nor have about why this is a dodgy thing, because it's not. There's generally nothing wrong with what we've done as a club here. And it's the same thing as when we got players to sign these long-term contracts. People wanted to make a big deal about it. But there was no rules against this. Nobody's ever discouraged it. When we did it, because we did it in the number of months that we did it, they were like, we don't want other clubs to copy it. And suddenly they now made it into an issue. But before that, no one ever had an issue. When we gave Kepa a 7-year deal, nobody had an issue. When Man United did a similar type of deal with another player, no one had an issue. And the fact of the matter is, to me, what just this shows in all actuality is that people just want to find something to be pissed off about, to run a narrative about, to run an agenda about in terms of Chelsea. And they really thought we were down and out. They didn't expect us to get rid of our deadwood. And in one day, we've announced how many players all in a row. People fully jumped the gun and said, that's it. They must be cheating. They must be doing this. The fact that a minute ago, someone has to tell you that one of Arsenal's player sales will be more than the amount we are going to be selling for 3 players to that same league just should say a lot. And they're going to talk about morality and ethics. And if we're going to talk about morality and ethics, cool, let's talk about it. But let's keep it consistent for everybody. Let's not just make it like it's a Chelsea problem when it's really not. This reminds me of exactly what we had to face when we went under when our club got shut down and we had no money and people were laughing at us, laughing at a club basically being taken out of control by their owner because of what was happening outside of it. And it's fine when that type of stuff happens, but the club shouldn't have to pay for the madness of somewhere else. When these clubs were having players being bought from us, where they were receiving the money that they were trying to criticize us for, nobody had a thing to say. And now they have an issue. And this is where, to me, I'm like, it's hypocrisy all over the place. And it's why I don't take these people serious, because they're not legitimately or objectively talking about it in a manner where they're genuinely trying to say we're protecting football. It's all a facade to actually hide their hidden agenda of they want to see Chelsea in ruins, and they thought that was going to happen this summer. Suddenly it's not. Suddenly they're pissed off. And the reason why they're more pissed off is because we're just getting started. We're suddenly only just dealing with outgoings right now. So once we turn around and say now we can deal with incomings, the fact that we don't have any more limitations like we would have done in terms of FFP and all of this stuff, suddenly they're scared. And that's what this shows me. So for me, it's a non-conversation starter. It says a lot about these people for me. And Gary Neville is one of the biggest hypocrites for not even calling this out and just saying it how it is, that he's at least being biased towards his own club. Because at least I could respect it. If he at least says, hey, I'm being biased towards my club, he stayed silent throughout this whole talks about who's taking over Man United, has said nothing ever since anything has been announced. He's saying nothing. So to me, I'm like, I'm sorry, but you all are hypocrites. You just want to speak up when the opportunity presents themselves for the downfall of somebody else you don't care about, but you won't actually speak up consistently throughout, no matter who the hell it is. So for that reason, for me, I'm just going to laugh at the tears that I'm seeing because there's nothing else to it.
Exactly. Very well said, mate. Very well said. Let me get to the super chat for Swiss Daniel. I didn't forget about you. He said, who would say no to a cheeky 80-90 million bid for Tchouaméni? I mean, I know we're shit, but why not? I personally would take him over Caicedo. Same price also. I'm not sure I'd necessarily sit there and say I'd take him over Caicedo. For me, it would be another situation of, well, we need both. But in general, couldn't hurt to try. Real Madrid have such an overcrowded midfield now. Kroos signed a new contract. Luka Modric signed a new contract now. Sure, eventually they won't. So I think Real Madrid will want to keep Tchouaméni for when Kroos and Modric are not there anymore. But they have Bellingham, they have Valverde, they have Camavinga, they have... who am I forgetting?
Did you say Bellingham already?
I said Bellingham, yeah. Still forgetting someone. They have such a stacked midfield. And Tchouaméni didn't go there to sit on the bench. And that's what he's done so far for the most part. And it looks like that's what he will keep doing. So I would be interested. I feel like there was a small report on something like this, but it wasn't necessarily a particularly reliable one. But Pice, I'll start with you. First of all, has there been any reports on this? And secondly, what would you think of it? Should we at least try it? If they say no, they say no. If Tchouaméni says no, he says no. But might be worth a shot, no?
I mean, I agree that we do need both. You know, I'd love both Tchouaméni and Caicedo, but I think for that amount of money, you'd have to prioritise one or the other. I would actually prefer Tchouaméni, to be fair, but you know, I don't think there's any way you can get him out of Real Madrid. I mean, you could try, but this is just, you know, a hypothesis, you know, a hypothetical situation. It's not going to happen. You know, our money's going to go into Caicedo. That's who the club want, and clearly who Pochettino wants as well. Because I don't think. Well, I hope to think we won't go down that same road again where we're just like, okay, we're getting this guy, here you go, to the manager. Like, I hope the manager actually wants players that are brought in. You know, I hope he actually wants Jackson, you know, like, so hope he wants Caicedo and whoever else we sign. So, yeah, I mean, it would be great. Tchouaméni is almost like the one that got away a little bit, you know, with us getting Saul. But, you know, maybe in a few years, who knows? He's still young. We'll see.
He is.
Never know.
There you go. I'll quickly get your boys' thoughts on it as well. Mo, would you be interested in us throwing in a cheeky bid for Tchouaméni? Like Pai said, it's very unlikely that he says no, that he says yes, and then Real Madrid say yes, but wouldn't hurt to try in my books.
I'm not going to be against it. Anything to improve our squad, I'm going to be for it, especially in that midfield area. And I do think, obviously, we have players that are on the come up that I would like to not block their paths. But when a signing like this presents themselves, if it's an actual real opportunity and there's a chance for us to get him, why would I say no to this? I think
exactly. Like someone like Lavia will way more block the path of like a Santos because they're basically the same age. So like arguably compared to Lavia, of course, Tchouaméni will be a lot more expensive, but still would make more sense in that way than Lavia would.
Yeah, I also think we have to remember with Real Madrid, there's always this thing where they end up buying quite a lot of talent and end up having too much depth in that squad where they eventually end up having to get rid of them. So right now it's saying 80 million. If we wait a year or two, we might be able to even get him cheaper than that. Probably we will have more competition at that point as well. But it's not a necessary step that we have to take. But if an opportunity presents themselves and God forbid this happens where we can't get Caicedo for whatever reason, then maybe definitely explore that option. But if it's up to me, I'm going to be that selfish guy that tells you get me both.
Yeah, no, exactly. And why not? Do you know what I mean? Why not? Save yourself a goalkeeper. Get me Germany.
I'm like, then, hey, Kepa can be a goalkeeper for the next 2 years if they say that's what I have to
all
deal
of them
with.
turn up with a midfield of Enzo, Tchouameni, and Caicedo next year. That'd be
Crazy, man. It's absolutely nuts.
It'd be crazy. But Bertram, I assume you're going to say similar things like, yeah, sure, try, but it's unlikely.
Yeah, it might be unlikely. Well, I don't know. They have one of the most stacked midfields for years to come, depending on Modric and Kroos's availability. But yeah, it probably wouldn't hurt to throw a bit away. I think test the waters potentially, as Mo alluded to earlier. If he doesn't settle and we show our interest early, invest in stocks early, we might be there for the next couple of seasons as well. But there probably is other good options as well if we're trying to be realistic. But I feel if we need to go for another midfield target, I think we should go big. The likes of Santos and Casadei would be looking to come in the next 1.5 years, 2 years maybe, and a player like Lavia, who's almost maybe a little bit better right now, but certainly in the future might not be at the same level, would halt this progression. So yeah, I might throw a cheeky bid in because Real, they have might enable them to go and get Mbappe with some of those funds. But yeah. Very interesting.
Real Madrid aren't completely immune to financial fair play regulations. People need to.
No, they aren't. But it wasn't
players. But Hazard left for free. Asensio left for free. They're letting go of a lot of players, but they're not getting money for any one of those. So
and they do need like a rebuild of the attack almost for the next couple of seasons. I swear this was like in tandem with us trying to get or offload Havertz, and kind of like swap deal plus some money kind of type of scenario. So it might be dead, but it could be quite interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely. One other thing I would like to touch on is N'Golo Kante has obviously officially left Chelsea now, has officially joined Al-Ittihad. Chelsea posted this yesterday. Farewell, N'Golo. Thanks for everything. That's all I can really say. But what I want to bring up now is N'Golo Kante has put out a farewell message himself. Where is it now? Why is it not there?
I just posted it if you want to go to mine.
Yeah, no, but I have it open somewhere, so there it is. Initially in French, we will look at the translation in a second. But yeah, N'Golo Kante, what a player he was for us. It's sad to see him go. It's still, obviously, to touch back on the whole Saudi, are we cheating thing. Officially, apparently wanted to keep Kante. I'm not as sure about that as some others are, because I think if we wanted to keep him, we could have kept him and convinced him to stay. I don't think Kante is a money-hungry man, so I don't think Kante will be that swayed by even 100 million, because who says Kante can't get that same offer from Saudi Arabia in a year's time? You know what I mean? But yeah, let's go through this and let's look at the translation, even though the translation looks a bit strange in terms of how it's formatted, because it's obviously been
Laurenz, I've got the English version, not like this on mine if you want it.
Okay, I'll bring up yours then. The
thing is, he just posted the English version to his Instagram. So.
Okay. There you go. This makes it a little bit easier. Goodbye, Chelsea. My time for me has come to open a new chapter in my career. But before that, it is so important for me to say thank you to the great and beautiful family of Chelsea. Fans, players, managers, medical staff, board members, and all those who have been with me during these last 7 seasons in this legendary club. Only good memories, great victories, and memorable titles won by your side. From the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. I will never forget you. And of course, last but not least, I thank my family, my friends who have always been by my side in good and in bad times. Without forgetting my agent, Karim, as well as my advisors, Rashid and Reece, who have given me such precious support since my beginnings and have been a major part of my success. These past times have not been easy for us and our family, but we were able to stay united to face rumors and lies. See you soon for new adventures on the pitch with Al-Ittihad and the French national team. I love him. I find this a slightly strange goodbye statement because he's mostly speaking to his agent, who is going to bloody Saudi Arabia with him. But yeah, appreciate him. Obviously,
they wrote this, right?
No, obviously didn't. I guess maybe in French he could have done, but I doubt it. But yeah, I can only say thank you for his services. It's a shame that his injuries unfortunately caught up with him the way they have. I'm still not 100% sure if it all was caused by that Europa League final that he played or not. We will never know that for sure. Maybe doctors do, but we won't. At the end of the day, with how little he was available, with how much money he earned, it probably makes more sense that he left for us as a club. But it's still a shame because one of the best midfielders, not just in our history, because arguably after Lampard, the second best one, but in history of football, one of the very, very best midfielders ever. Like, there's very few players that have done what N'Golo Kante has done, to go to Leicester from where he was, win the league, join Chelsea, win the league, win the Champions League, win the World Cup. Like, if France weren't so dreadful, sometimes should have won a Euros as well. What a player, an absolutely astonishing footballer. Unique human as well. You don't come around like a lot of these types of players that run around with 10-year-old phones, 10-year-old minis driving around in those rather than fancy Lamborghini Urus. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's not many of those. So appreciate him in every way. I hope maybe we can see him, come back in some way, shape or form one day. He seems to love London that much. So who knows what can possibly happen? I doubt as a coach, but maybe as some sort of ambassador. You never know. That would be wonderful. But yeah, thank you to him and good luck, I guess. Saudi Arabia, I hope he does well. But at the end of the day, I don't think he cares. I don't think any of these players go out there to win trophies. Let's be honest. In particular, because all the clubs there are owned by the same people, which is just like, it's just weird. it's just.
I think they own 4 of the clubs, isn't it? That's what it was. If I remember,
think it's even more than 4. I'm not even sure. Imagine Chelsea would play Strasbourg next season for a trophy. That would just be weird.
No, yeah. It is weird because they own all 4 clubs in the same league, which wouldn't be allowed in the European leagues and stuff. But I think in that league they just don't really care.
Yeah.
I think what they've been doing, like, I read that basically, I can't remember who said it, but one of the journalists said the other day that like the Saudi Arabians are basically choosing which players go to which team. It's almost like, okay, you go there, like the clubs aren't really allowed to do anything about it. It's like there's like higher ups, like, okay, Ziyech is going here, Kante's going there. Like, it's almost like a draft thing. It's quite funny.
Yeah, they're just trying to make the league more competitive. Maybe I'm not entirely sure, but I don't know what it says about the other teams. I don't even know how many how many teams they have in their league. To be fair,
me neither. Me neither. Honestly, I mean, to me, it just feels like a repeat of what China did a few years ago, and I reckon it will probably fizzle out at some point once they realize, this investment isn't worth it permanently.
I was going to say, like it's the fact that you brought up the China thing right now. And early on, Pai said something about, and in regards to if a player is above a certain amount, and it's checked by the Premier League in terms of the valuation they're being sold for and stuff. Yeah. Was that not in play when the Chinese league was coming into play and they were buying players at crazy prices?
I think it was in play then already. I think that's been a thing for a long time, that they always do certain checks, that there's not too much dodgy business going on. But, don't quote me to it. And I don't know how specific those checks are either, I will be honest. But Mo, much to say on N'Golo Kante leaving. Obviously, if you want to touch on the farewell message yourself as well, of course, do.
And N'Golo, man, I don't know what to say, man. I respect what he's brought to our club, and I think he's offered a lot to our club. He was basically a cheat code. Let's put it that way. There's no other way to put it. Everyone was jealous that we had him, and he was. And what Tuchel said, I could understand. A fit N'Golo Kante is basically a cheat code, like Mbappe is, like these big players are, just because of what sort of value they bring to a team, what sort of consistency you can get out of them. It's a shame that his career with us didn't end on a high note that I would have liked for him, because I think he deserved. In hindsight,
we should have let him go after the Champions League win, but obviously,
honestly, it felt like it was the right thing to do, if I'm honest with you, and it would have definitely meant then we're not letting him also go for free, if I'm correct from that moment as well. Yeah. And it's a shame that it's ended on that side, but I'm actually really happy for him that he's getting a move that allows him to, financially be better off. And if it's at Saudi, wherever it was going to be, I was always going to wish him well. Good luck with it, to be fair. And
I'm just happy he's not going to like Arsenal or any other rivals of ours. In Saudi Arabia, you do what you want to do. Do you know what I mean? We can all remember.
I'm less upset about those things nowadays than I used to be in the past. And I think that there's certain scenarios. If Hazard left us and then went to Arsenal, I would have been genuinely upset. I'll be like, my club should have no right selling him in his prime to Arsenal. But when a player is no longer in their prime or no longer of good use to us, wherever they end up, I'm not here to stand against their wishes. As long as we get the right money, as long as everybody wins, it is what it is. Let's facilitate for that move to happen. I think that's why with me, when it comes to him, and N'Golo Kante, even Kai Havertz, I've got no real issue. Hey, we got good money for him, and they were the club that was willing to pay. Fair enough. It is what it is. It ends on a healthy note. And with N'Golo Kante, I just think I wish we gave him more, because he's just that type of player in terms of quality. It would have been nice to give him more trophies just so that he could stat pad, and when people look back on him in the years from now, they wouldn't underrate him. But I feel like he's one of those players that might go under the radar unless Chelsea fans, speak about him as highly as we do about other legends.
Yep, I agree. Bertram, anything you want to say on N'Golo Kante?
Nothing else, and just thank you. Came in the first season and transformed the team that pretty much had finished 10th, and his signing alone almost pulled us all the way up to it's one of the best modern Chelsea sides we've seen, winning 30 out of 38 games, and him being instrumental in it as well. And it's almost annoying that we had a player of we had a midfield trio in one guy, and he was all in one of our worst periods of our modern history. You dread to think what he could have done if he played for us in like 2005. With
imagine he played with Lampard,
or him, Lampard, Makelele, Essien, stuff like this. It's almost I'm happy that with us he literally did get to win everything. Other than the Carabao Cup, which is unfortunate, but he won everything else with us, and I'm happy that he at least got to experience that. And I remember us talking about almost selling him to PSG in like 2018-19, but I'll always be thankful for him. Him as well. It's often forgotten. It's overshadowed by his performance in the Champions League final, where he was, the tweet that Man City put out says everything. But he put his body on the line for us in the Europa League final as well, which for me arguably was bigger. He was injured for a couple of months before that. That was the only game he played from like March onwards as well, and he was injured, throughout the next season. So he put his body on the line for us to make sure that we won that Europa League. So words almost can't describe what he's been to us. Perfect player, perfect guy as well, very humble. So to N'Golo, I doubt he's watching, but to N'Golo, thank you.
Exactly. Pice, much to add from your point as well? I assume similar things.
Yeah, no, the boys pretty much said everything. Really one of our most important signings we've ever made, to be honest with you. If we let this guy go to one of our rivals, then geez, like it would have been, trouble. This guy was, one of the best midfielder in the world, for some period of time. So even when he had those injuries and came back, like he just showed levels every single time, So
even that game against Liverpool this year under
he was amazing.
It was crazy.
Bro, it was levels. Like he was so good. Like yeah, man. Like I honestly, like he's had so many memorable performances. Like the Super Cup final against Liverpool, I think it was
again also coming back directly from injury.
That game, honestly, I think that was his best ever game for us. I never forget that game. That and the Champions League final was just levels, man. He's levels.
Yeah. Even that Real Madrid game, semi-final, innit?
Yeah. That Super Cup one though, like he was dribbling like he was Messi as well. It was just it was a joke.
Hey, and sometimes he was like that. He could dribble like him. He just unfortunately sometimes couldn't quite pass like him. That's the only shame. That's why the most famous passes ever made was when he passed to himself. That's a whole different thing. Just on a quick side note, most satisfying thing about the Champions League trophy is this Champions League logo here at the bottom, by the way. So thank you, Kante, for giving us those photos. Obviously, many players did, but I feel like that's not appreciated enough. But yeah. Another couple of outgoing news before we get to the Havertz situation. Mateo Kovacic to Man City. Here we go. We're getting £30 million. Pice, I'll mainly let you speak on it. Obviously, I'm sure you're sad about it, disappointed by it because you love him. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to say he had to go, but I guess it made sense in a way. He wanted to leave. Everything comes to an end at some point, doesn't it? So here we are. We're getting 30 million for it. Sure, it could have been a bit more. Sorry if you can hear any music in the background, by the way. But yeah, Pice, I'll let you speak so I can mute myself and no one hears music.
No, yeah, obviously that's extremely disappointing. He was my favourite player, to be honest, at Chelsea. Like, I just loved watching him. My type of footballer, I really, really liked him. Thought he was underrated as well. I don't think he got enough credit sometimes. And for all his injury troubles, there was plenty of times as well where he played through injury for us, So I think this fee is underwhelming to me. I know he had 1 year left on his contract, but it does feel a bit underwhelming. I think we could have pushed it up another 10 mil, but especially because City have so much money. But
I agree. Actually, I think we should have done. I mean, remember when the Havertz to Real Madrid link was happening, and I was like saying I think we should ask for more than the 52 million pounds that was rumored at the time. Therefore, Kai, we're now getting more, but I think that exactly like you said. I mean, they're losing Gundogan and literally need someone. It's not like they're just doing us a favor or doing Kovacic a favor. They want him. They need him. They could have easily coughed up 40 million for sure.
Yeah, so I got to find another player to to love watching as much as I loved watching Kova. Yeah, well, it was like a, you know, like a. I just loved watching him at first sight. Like I remember his first game, wasn't it Arsenal? I think him and Hazard came on as a double sub. I'm pretty sure. Came on as a double sub, and I remember because I was like unsure at the time. Like I didn't really watch much of him for Real Madrid. And I remember, like, he did, like, 2 dribbles in, like, the first 3 minutes. And I was like, I thought it was Hazard. And then everyone said, no, it's Kovacic.
He dribbled like Hazard, absolutely.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, my days. And, like, ever since then, I don't know, I just really liked him. So,
and it also, honestly, that was another moment that pissed me off. I didn't watch much of that Croatia-Spain game, but I watched a little bit of it in extra time. And all of a sudden, in extra time, my guy started a dribble. I was like, excuse me, you haven't dribbled like that for us in a year. Why? Why do you always do it for Croatia? But yeah, I do agree with you, Pais. I also like, obviously, he was born in Austria as much as he is an Austrian, but he's Croatian. He was born in Austria, so I had that little extra affiliation to him, I guess. So I appreciate him. I love him. I thank him for his contributions. And I do wish him well in a way because he's going to City. City are going to win regardless of whether we give them anyone or not. So like, I'm not that bothered. It's just like, I hope he has a good time as long as he doesn't score. If he scores against us, I'll be fuming because he didn't score enough for us. Then I'll be okay with him scoring against us.
That's the most bait thing to happen, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
It's so bait. Like, especially the amount, like, our fans saying he can't shoot. He's just going to
Mount will probably score a hat-trick if he goes to United. Even Havertz will probably score.
yeah. All these guys are going to score against us, for fuck's sake.
That's part of why I hate them selling to rivals, especially like defenders. I'm a little less annoyed about usually. Like David Luiz to Arsenal, sure annoyed me, but you know he got sent up so much it was kind of fun.
Even Emerson scored against us.
He did, yeah, he did. Good old Emerson. But yeah, Bertram, your thoughts. Do you think we should have tried to get more money out of Kovacic than 30 million and 25 plus 5 on the add-on? So not even a guaranteed 5. Although it is said here that it's not about player performance. It's if City win shit, so we will get 30 million. Let's be honest.
Yeah, well, it really almost defies belief in a sense because I think he is better than that. I think he has always shown us his true potential, but we've seen in glimpses as well, and where I've sat back and thought, wow, he was at times our best midfielder. So 25 mil, rising to 30 mil, it seems quite cheap. And the annoying thing is we're not selling him to like Arsenal or something where we know it can, there's a high chance that it's going to go tail up. We're selling him to City, and you just know Pep, next year probably maybe it's not going to be as good. But when they've had that 1 year, a player of his technical ability in that midfield, it's going to be good. And
he's going to look so good at City is going to be ridiculous.
He's going to look so good, and he might not just fill Gundogan's role. He might just find a new role. They always Pep's are.
I mean, he will have to, he's not going to score the goals that Gundogan scores. So.
You never know.
I do know. I'm pretty sure of that one.
We sold Jorginho he hadn't scored for years from somewhere from the penalty spot. He pretty much, he almost scored a screamer for Arsenal on pretty much his debut. But it's weird that it's that small of a fee. But I think this is just the cost of trying to move on players. And unfortunately, he's going to City. Unfortunately, it's for a low price. But 25 mil rising to 30, you just have to take it. Though that's kind of how I look at it. Unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I agree. Mo, similar sentiments. Do you think we should have tried for more money, or you're right with this one?
And yeah, I think when a player is no longer committed to what we have to do going forward, we just need to get the best possible deal we can get. It looks like this was basically it. And unfortunately, I agree with Price in the sense that he's a player that we've underrated quite a lot. And more times than not, we've put a lot of both experienced and young players in unfavorable scenarios where we've not been able to get consistency out of them over a long period of time. He happens to fall under that category. I I wish we would get more respect when we do look back on him as a player, because I think he's a very entertaining player to watch. And I do think that with Man City, he's definitely going to be a player that improves that side as well. He brings just a different element to their team that, not that they were lacking, but I think it's a much needed addition to their squad, especially with losing Gundogan as well. And it's a good replacement for them from that perspective. But yeah, like, I think that if this is the amount that is the best that we can get for him, and it allows us to focus on incomings after this, we needed to do what we needed to do, and it needed to be done as soon as possible. So I'm quite happy with it. Good luck to him. Hopefully they don't do well. I'd rather us do well.
Hopefully not. But then the problem is, it's probably not going to be us. So, and I still rather City win things than United, Liverpool, Arsenal, any of these lots. So,
Really much, yeah. Unfortunately, at this point, that's where I'm at as well.
Yeah, so for me, it's like, it's either Arsenal or City, then I can live with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, as much as at some point, like, if City keep doing this, I mean, at some point, they will flip and catch Man United if they keep going. But,
you know what the thing is that's always annoying? It's when players that you like score against you. Like, I remember when Lampard scored against us, it was to score, to equalize.
I mean, Lampard is a bit different still, but
it felt like a loss. I swear to God, if you asked me that game, we'd lost the game, because I didn't even know how to react. I didn't know how to respond.
Did we draw 1-1 or did we win it?
I think it was 1-1 draw, if I remember correctly. He scored the equalizing goal. And I remember just sitting there saying, why could it have not been any other player so I can be pissed off and like literally cuss out at the TV or say whatever I want with absolute peace? I can't. I'm sat there just like wondering about life. Like, thinking, why
I think I've told this story on here before, right? But I was working at the time, and I was on my way home or about to go home, and the game had already started, and I was like, I had to work like a little longer and was late to come home to watch the game. And then a mate of mine was like, text me, Lampard just scored. I was like, no way. And he pranked me. So Frank hadn't actually scored then. But then 15 minutes later, Frank did actually score.
Oh,
he texted me the same thing again, and I didn't believe him. And I get home, and I'm like, oh no, Frank actually scored. I was fuming. I was absolutely fuming. He'd done me dirty, man. I was livid. But yeah, shall we get into most certainly the biggest news of the day? Biggest news, well, maybe not the summer, because we might, in terms of incomings, it might be bigger. But Kai Havertz to Arsenal is a here we go. For a fee. What the flip just happened here? There we go. First, Arsenal signing as deal will be completed in the next few hours. Here we go. £60 million guaranteed fee, £5 million in add-ons. Some sources will bring that up in a second, talking about potentially even a little bit more. Havertz will sign the contract this week. Documents are being prepared, and it was also said that he was very crucial in making this happen by being the guy that wanted to come to Chelsea. That wanted to come to Arsenal and said, I want Arsenal. He didn't want to return to the Bundesliga, potentially to Bayern, who did have some sort of interest. Gutting to me personally, because I like Havertz. I might not rate him that highly and not rate him as highly as I once did. But I like him, and he gave us a lot. And I think, imagine we lose that Porto fine. And I'm not saying if he doesn't score, someone else doesn't eventually or whatever. But imagine we don't. Like, imagine not having experience winning that. And the reason we want it is him. Yeah, people say, oh, we're giving too much credit to one goal. Think about your own happiness in your own heart. Compare any other win, any other thing to that other than 2012. There's not many that come close to that feeling. So I think people don't give those important goals enough credit, in my opinion, because those are the goals that matter most. Pulisic scoring in it or assisting in every round before that wouldn't matter. Mount being involved in goals in all the rounds before that wouldn't matter. Do any of you remember 2008 other than the Liverpool semi-final because it was crazy? No one cares because we lost the final. We only care about how great Kante was, how great Jorginho was, how great Tuchel was, how great Rudiger was, how great Mendy was. We only care about all of those things because we won the final. And Havertz is who won us that final. I don't give a shit what anyone says. Oh, it was a tap-in. Oh, it was this. Oh, it was just one moment. I don't care. We won the Champions League. The only other guy that ever made that happen for us is Didier Drogba. No one else has ever made that happen for us, right? Like, even John Terry couldn't make it happen for us. He slipped from a penalty spot. Kai made it happen for us. And I personally think people don't appreciate that enough rather than that they give it too much credit, in my opinion. But that doesn't change the fact that especially this past season and also the one before that, he wasn't good enough. He wasn't good enough. And with that being said, only having 2 years left of his contract, getting £65 million back, pretty much as we paid for him, a little less than that maybe, is crazy. And I'm very happy with that. And as much as it's going to hurt seeing him in an Arsenal shirt for me personally, I'm not sure if he's going to do well for them or not. I think it all depends on where they're going to play him. If they play a midfield three of Odegaard and him with someone, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think he's going to play instead of Odegaard. I don't really know what's going to happen. I have no idea how it's going to go. But if he does well for them, it will sting. But at least we got 65 million out of it. You know, it would have stung more if we sold him for 40, and he would have done well for Arsenal. Do you know what I mean? So I guess that is a positive, and that's what I will mostly touch on. Mo, I'll let you go first on this one. I guess it's kind of what you touched on earlier in terms of if you get a good amount of money out of it, we had to do what we had to do. He wanted to go. He wasn't going to sign a new contract. So if we kept him another year, he would have only been sold for less. So I guess this was a good move in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, again, it's one of those things, right? People just don't like the fact that it's Arsenal that we're selling to. But for the price that we're getting, I think a lot of Chelsea fans will be pretty much unified right now and saying, yeah, we're happy that this deal has gone through. My worry with stuff like this sometimes is just more so, I do feel like the style that Arsenal plays is very much more fluid, and their team is a lot more set up. So my worry is that they pay this amount of money, they get him into their system, and he actually just hits the ground running, and they end up actually working out really well with him. And that then unfortunately reflects bad on the point that I've been trying to make about our club, in the sense that when it comes to experienced and young players, we don't seem to be finding a way to get the best out of them, profile them correctly, and develop them into what we need them to be. So from that perspective alone, for me, it is a little bit worrying, because you're still selling to a rival, you're selling to a competitor. But at the end of the day, when you look at the amount of money that we're getting back, considering what we paid for the player, and I'm actually quite happy. I did not think we were going to be able to get this amount. It looked like we were going to make up, even if we sold to Real Madrid. You said it early on, it was 52 million plus add-ons at best. That's what it looked like. And as soon as any higher was mentioned, they went off the table, and they were like, they're not willing to negotiate. So I think Chelsea got the best deal that they could get, and they stuck out strong. And to me, what this does is it gives us even a stronger stance with Mount in a way, because Mount is an English player that will help with the quota of having English talent. He's also more proven and more valuable to us than Havertz was. So wherever we do end up selling for him, it should at the very minimum be this mark, if not more. And hopefully
But he only has 1 year left on the contract. That does change.
He does, yeah, I know. And I think, but again, how much another team needs him and how much we need him, that's the two perspectives that I feel like we can stand strong on our feet with that one. And if he was to stay, I think we have more chance of convincing him to sign a new contract if Pochettino gets that time with him. But if that's the case, that we end up having to part ways beforehand and Mount's completely set in his ways, if we get 60 million plus and this deal help towards us at least getting that type of return, then I'm actually quite happy. So hopefully we're able to do that. I'm not going to say good luck to Kai Havertz. There's nothing more than I hate than Arsenal Football Club and their fans. So, yeah, man, thanks for that Champions League goal. But, yeah, man, I wish you the worst of luck.
No, that's what I say. I'm not going to sit there and say I wish you bad luck, but it's just I hope it doesn't go great, and I hope you leave Arsenal soon. I was a bit disappointed to see today that maybe Jorginho won't actually leave Arsenal, because I thought that would be quite great if he goes there, stops them winning the league, and then leaves. Unfortunately, he's now maybe staying, which is a bit sad. But yeah, I just hope, give it a year or two, a few red cards like David Luiz, a few Bambi moments, and then he can leave again. Maybe go back to the Bundesliga. Then I think we would all be happy with that. I'll keep Bertrand to last because I think he has the most positive sentiments towards Kai. So I'll let you go, Pais. You were the most, certainly from the group of us four, not quite Lewis levels, but otherwise, certainly the most. He needs to leave. He needs to get gone. He has gotten gone, and we got good money for it. So
I need to say thank you.
Yeah, at least he not only won us the Champions League, he also gave us good money back. Essentially, we paid a couple of million for him to win the Champions League. That kind of makes all the misery that he provided in between almost worth it.
Bro, I need to know who did this negotiation. They need a medal, man. This is a bank heist. Honestly, this is a bank heist. Nah.
Hey, I swear we got Marina involved somehow.
Yeah,
no one can pull this off.
Surely she's in the background on this one. Like, I don't know how we got 65 mil for this guy, but I would love to have Lewis on this stream right now as well.
No, I wouldn't. He would make me feel miserable.
Oh man,
he's been pretty harsh towards Havertz, but
yeah. In my books, Lewis loves to forget that he literally cried when Havertz scored a goal. He literally,
what it is though. Like I it's just obviously I love him for that Champions League final goal, but like I fucking hate Arsenal, man. Like I actually despise Arsenal.
The going to Arsenal also annoys me. I agree.
That
part I understand a lot more. But
me.
Lewis doesn't even hate him for going to Arsenal. Lewis is buzzing.
Yeah, no, I honestly, like, I despise Arsenal. It's more than just don't like for me. Arsenal and their fans are just, it's the same with me and Liverpool. I hate Liverpool and their fans as well. Those are like my two most hated clubs. Obviously, Spurs is great for the match day rivalry and stuff. But so in terms of fan base and just, I just hate Arsenal and Liverpool. So the fact that he's gone to Arsenal just, that's why I said he's a snake. But, we'll see. I'm intrigued to see, how he does because,
what would you say if he ends up being really good for Arsenal? What do you say then?
I wouldn't know what to say because like I saw someone say like, okay, so what? Like if he does, it doesn't change that he was shit for us type thing and that type thing and that sort of
But it just makes it more clear that it was down to us, not him, if he does really well for someone else.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I'll always have that bias and say that Chelsea's expectations and pressure is harder than Arsenal as well. That's just me being biased. Arsenal fans might think different, but I don't know how you can considering we've been the most successful team and you have to have that on you. I mean, even Kante said like the day he arrived, I was told we have to win trophies. There's no other option. Like, I don't know if it's going to be the same under Bowley and that, but we need to get back to that mentality.
We let go of all the players that have won us trophies, man, including Kai.
Like, if we're not there, like Bowley needs to take a picture, read Kante's, words, like, come on, like, let's get back to winning trophies. But, like, it's interesting. I was watching AFT earlier as well, AFTV out of boredom, to be honest. Just seeing what
How can you be bored on a day like today with so much news?
Well, I was just during the afternoon. I was like, I need something on the TV, and it came up on my recommended. So I put it on YouTube. I was like, okay, let's see what they're saying about Havertz. Obviously, you've got Robbie trying to be the optimist, and then there was another guy next to him going, I absolutely hate this signing. This is so stupid. Like, where do we play him? And but
it's true. If I was an Arsenal fan, I'd be utterly confused because they're not going to play him up front. They don't play a number 10, and if then they have Odegaard, who's number 1, their captain, number 2, one of their best players.
That's
what they do with Havertz. I don't really understand, so I'll take this. Hopefully, he sits on the bench every game. That'd be even better for us.
He was saying like they've got to really play him where Xhaka played in sort of that advanced like centre mid role.
Yeah, but then Odegaard and Havertz in midfield, you're going to get this
and then the guy was like, well, we can't do that though because Havertz can't win duels like Xhaka did. He's not as is he good defensively? No, like it's a weird one. Like it's not. The Arsenal fan was like, he can't do Xhaka's role. He can't start over Odegaard, and if he's up front, then we're screwed because the Arsenal fan was like, he's not a good finisher like Jesus, which is true. So I don't understand it, to be honest with you, but I mean, we'll see. I do wish him very bad luck, though. I mean, hopefully he flops massively, because I hate Arsenal.
Yeah, and also to make us feel better, if he flops there, it's better. It's better for us. It makes feel us a bit better. Yeah. Bertram, I also want to bring up a few stats about Kai after, which I want to talk about in a second. But first, I want to let you just defeat the whole move to Arsenal. Him wanting the move to Arsenal. Like, what do you make of all that, Bertram?
I hate it. I really hate the fact that he's going to Arsenal. I like the fact that we were selling him to Madrid because, for all the bad performances he's put in, I will always like him. I will always respect him for not only the goal in the final, which immortalized him, as our commentator said, but the run up to the performance he had against Madrid was sensational as well, and the penalty in the Super Cup, all of these things, they're tying him to be more close to a Chelsea legend. But the fact of him going to Arsenal potentially being good will really, I like Pice. I wouldn't really know what to feel. It would be very difficult because it'd almost be tough, like watching highlights back. If he just got to say something crazy, if he scores like 25 goals in some new system next season, it's going to be tough watching the Champions League final again because we're going to be reminded of the fact that, here we had a guy who we weren't able to really make good. And then we see him play really well for Arsenal. Also it could, have an effect that if he's terrible, it makes it all the better. But for the fee, we'll just have to accept it. It's a very, very, very good fee. And as you said, we paid a couple of million for him to come in and win the Champions League. And almost worse is the fact that we don't get chant anymore. It's almost the best part of always having him in, having the chant as well. But for the money, I think it's a necessary evil.
To be honest, the chant kind of died when Roman left anyway, but still.
Yeah. But it's a necessary evil, but very, very good money. And yeah, I think, Pat, you almost need to find out who's our transfer guru, if it is Win Stanley or who it is, because we do need to give him a medal. £65 million for Kai Havertz.
I'm trying, don't worry. I'm trying.
Yeah, but and I think it does end up being like it's like a net profit for us because of the amortization. So something like £37.5 million is net profit we have this season, which it just. They're funding our Caicedo transfer for us right now, which is very, very, very nice of them. So thank you for that. And he doesn't really fit into their system. So it's going to be interesting to see because Arsenal players don't really have a good track record of moving across London. So it's going to be interesting. But no matter what, we will always, in a sense, be thankful for that goal because he doesn't score, we don't win. Pretty much, it's that simple.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Now, I just want to highlight this, and I'm actually not going to sit here and say, look how great Havertz is in defending. That's actually, he's gone to Arsenal now. I'm past that. I defend the players I like while they're here, not when they're gone. But still, I found it interesting. Now, obviously, the most goals thing is joined with Sterling, I think, also in the Prem as well as in all comps. But still, most goals, most shots on target, most chances created, most aerial duels won, most possession won in the final third, most final third passes, most duels won, most flick-ons, which is a random stat, and most layoffs. And obviously not the large majority of why he has all of these stats is because he played more than all of our other forwards. I think we're all aware of that. But it's still, all these things are not necessarily usually all the same players has the highest stat in all of these things in one club. That's not common. So
but
I hope we are capable of is, as much as he didn't do it well enough, he still did it the most. We need to find a way for someone to compensate for that, right? Like, as much as we need to hit the final output to be better, the goals to be better, the shots on target to be better, the chances to create, we need all of that to be better, sure. But he had other players already with him, and still he had the most in all of that. And I don't think we're signing a player who's as doing all of the things as he is. Now, he might, that's Kai's problem. He's what's the word? He's the master of none. What's before? How does the expression go? Do you know what I mean? Mo Pice? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a
jack
you're good at everything but not great at anything.
Like
just a jack of all trades.
Master of none.
Yeah, obviously. Is that what
you're trying to say? Okay, cool. I was trying to get there with you. I was like, damn, I don't know what you're talking about.
I was saying it, but I had my mic muted.
Okay. Yeah, no, but that's what I'm trying to say. So, like, that's his issue, that he was good at a lot of things, but not, I didn't actually mean jack of all trades. But regardless, jack of all trades still fits what I was trying to say. It was still, like, he wasn't good enough at any of those specific things, but he was still good at a lot of things. So, at least in my opinion, maybe someone like Pice and most definitely Lewis would disagree. But fact of the matter is, we still need to replace it, especially the errors. Now, we might get Jackson. I'll bring that up in a second. But will it be as easy to compensate and as easy to make up for as people think? Or do you think because think of late this season, whenever we dropped Havertz, we were dreadful. I'm not saying we were good with Havertz, but we were another good step worse when Havertz didn't play. And now we're replacing him short in Kunku, but not in his position. We're replacing him with Jackson, essentially. And Broja, when fit. Is that going to be so necessary? Obviously, different system, different manager, so everything changes still. But is it going to be that easy to replace as people make it out to be, Bacho? Well, I'll go with you first on this one.
I think looking at this season, I think a lot of this ties down to the fact that it's, most click-ons, it's down to him playing more, down to the way we played. I think if we get into a coherent system, you ideally you wouldn't want one player to have most of the best stats because it would neutralize your attacking threat if that player were to be injured or locked down or something. So generally you'd almost just want it spread out. So I think we would definitely be able to. I think Nkunku covers a lot of this. I think getting a good striker in Jackson, we're going to see what he does, but I think just spreading this out definitely will help from it. But when I look at these things, most flick-ons, okay, what? Most layups, okay, fine. It's not fake stats; they are real, but in a sense, how much do they really matter? How much does it sway? But the fact that it is most of these things is just the way we played. And having watched him play this season, generally, I think it's been quite unimpressive, very uninspiring. He's also been quite alone up there. So not to say that, he's a bad player or we didn't get enough out of him. I just think, for me personally, I think this won't be that difficult to find a replacement to. Although I think he would have, he would definitely have given something to us. But for my money, I think this would be quite easy to fix out. And I think the stats are quite, they're quite heavily skewed into the fact that they want to kind of, not this is an agenda against Chelsea, but they kind of twisting it into being like a big loss for us and a big gain for Arsenal. I think this is just, some stats that have been conjured up personally.
This is Todd Bowley on Squawker Burner and send it to our Twitter.
Very good. Very good. I mean, Pice, I know you're going to say we're easily going to compensate for it, but it's still, did it surprise you when I'm sure you have seen this before, I brought it up now. Still interesting that he was highest in all of these things. Again, obviously most of it is because he played the most minutes, I'm very aware. But I still wouldn't have expected it having watched the season, I will say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I don't know. Like, for me, stats are good, but I have eyes as well. I don't think Havertz is, I don't know. I just don't rate him. So when I see stuff like this, it's like, okay, yeah, but we finished 12th. He was crap most of the season. So, like, what do I take from this? Like, I'm pretty sure Gallagher would rank most in some stats, if you brought some other stats up. So,
but that's the thing. Yeah. No one else was ranked highest and most in this many stats. That's what I'm trying to get at, where I'm like, we're not replacing someone that's only done one thing and we can just replace that one thing. We need because we're not going to sign a player that does all of the things. So we need players that haven't done it so far to actually step up and do some of the things that Kai did as well. As much as Kai didn't do them well enough, we still need players to start doing them more. Otherwise, it's not going to work out either. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Flickon's layoffs.
Yeah, Flickon is ridiculous.
but like just looking at that, like chances created, shots on target. I think Nkunku could rank most for those for us next season. Yep. Goals will be interesting. Aerial duels. I mean, he is tall. I mean, most of those aerial duels are probably from corners, to be honest. Possession one, final third. That's an interesting one. Final third passes. Yeah, it's interesting. Jules is the most interesting one there because I think he's terrible at Jules, so that really surprises me.
That shows you how terrible all the others are as well.
Yeah, I was about
I'm
to say
very intrigued, by the way, if this could end up true as well. Obviously, Fabrizio and Matt Law are now talking about the 60+5. Sammy Mokbel is saying even more. Hey,
Tom Roddy said 67.5 as well, so I think there's definitely differences in fee going around, but it's interesting.
No, there you go. Two more things that I want to touch on because I know Price needs to head off after that as well. One of the big things, Manchester United have made a new bid for Mason Mount of 45+5 million. We rejected it again, and we said we want 60+5. So we went a little bit down from our 70 million initially, I guess. Also, what I find interesting is this bid from David Orton. It says Chelsea are trying to comply with Mount's wishes. I find this odd. I personally, and this I could of course be absolutely wrong, but I'm still wouldn't be totally shocked if Mount somehow ends up staying this summer and then actually still gets used quite regularly by Poch and then ends up signing a new contract as the next season goes on. Now, this might not happen, but I wouldn't be completely shocked if that did happen. Now, apparently there's now a bit more confidence that they can get it done, and apparently with complying with Mount's wishes does make it sound like he wants this, which is also the part I hate about it. But yeah, really, this is not much. There's not much to it. All I'm saying is cough up more money or fuck off. Like, what is this? Stop trying to lowball us. Like, what is this? We're talking about a player that starts a lot for England, has won the Champions League, has won Player of the Season for Chelsea back-to-back until 2 seasons ago. You're not going to get him for 45 million. I don't, like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? That's all I'm trying to say. What did Lewis say in reply? Down below in these replies. What did he say? Rough day for Mineral Side. yeah, it is. But yeah, not that much to say on it, but other than just cough up more money, innit?
Yeah, I mean, give us the money. Like, it's crazy right now. Like, we're generating a lot of money, and just we need more of it. Like, Man United need to start being serious. Like, we're never going to accept £50 million. Like, what a stupid bid, honestly. 45 plus 5. Their first one was even more stupid. Like, I think personally, we could I think the minimum we would do is 55 plus 5. I think that'd be the minimum. I don't even think it would be 50 plus 5. I think it would have to be 55 plus 5. That would be the bare minimum I think that Chelsea would accept. But yeah, it's interesting how like Ornstein said, there's more confidence now. I mean, how can there be more confidence when they've upped the bid 5 mil? Like, I don't know ways like maybe United are going to come back and be like, okay, like we'll up it 10 mil this time, and maybe that's where the confidence comes from. But it's so hard to predict actually, because as much as I think he's going to leave, I'm a bit like you. I'm like, well, we've got sales in now.
Especially with the Man United takeover also happening.
Yeah, are we that like under under pressure to sell him now? Like, maybe we needed, Havertz and Mount sold, and then we could go from there. But obviously now Havertz has got sold, and we've got the the Saudi guys, and it's the Saudi clubs have come for the three guys and that. I don't know if we're under that much pressure to sell, but at the same time, is obviously always going to be conflicting stories. It has been for months over what Mount doesn't want, does want. So, I'm not doubting Ornstein. I couldn't do that. So
yeah, no.
if he thinks this to leave, then we need to do that, because
it depends on what the reasons are for him wanting to leave, I guess. If Chelsea changed their stance on this, and then he'd be happy to stay, obviously, then it's different.
Well, that's the thing, though. That's why I keep saying, I feel like the relationship has gotten so bad between all parties, where it's just what's even the point in keeping him? Because I think even in the article, Ornstein was like, Chelsea risked losing him for free in 12 months. It's
only working with Poch could change that. That's the
but it's also been said that Poch is pushing for him to stay, and then we're still entertaining bids. So I don't know. This has just been such a long drawn out saga. I just want it to end. Just give us a final decision. Stop. This is why Man United are annoying me as well. Stop doing these stupid bids. Seriously. Yeah. They're happy to overpay on players like Anthony as well, by the way. But when they have an England international, Mason Mount, who's played over 100 Premier League games, probably, they're being stingy. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, no, fair play. Mo, thoughts?
And we need to stay stronger on this, man. I'm a little bit disappointed that we even lowered a little bit of what we want from them. And personally, for
Alex
me,
Goldberg says we actually want 90 mil. So
freaking hell, if that's what we wanted, that was maybe a little bit crazy. But
hey, if we got 90 mil, I'd be happy to sell him.
Oh, trust me, 100%. I already said in it, anything above 60 million plus add-ons, I'm usually okay. But for me, when a club is doing 45 million plus 5 million, that means they're not near your valuation in terms of how they see things, and they're trying to be stingy. So all you do is you stay even stronger with your stance, and you let things play out. So I'm personally not happy with that, us lowering a little bit, because now that will make them think, okay, cool, we just need to raise it a little bit, and we'll be able to get them below that 60 million mark. If Chelsea lower it from this amount, for me, I'm a bit disappointed. I'll be honest with you.
I agree. Bertram, do you agree with that as well? That yes, we might have apparently lowered it. Lowered it a little bit. The demands, I suppose. Hope we don't lower them anymore. Do you still have any hope that he stays? Do you, if what it said below, like I say, Chelsea are trying to comply with Mount's wishes, does that even make you actually then want to sell him? Because I usually am like, well, if you don't want to be here, go then. Do you know what I mean? The only thing I'm always like is, I'm not saying I don't trust Ornstein, but I'm like, we don't know the details of why those are his wishes. So I'm always a little bit hesitant, but when I know a player actually doesn't want to be here, then as much as I like the player, I don't care then. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, and I think at minimum I'd want Havertz money for him. I think he was a 2-time player of the year for us, won the Champions League. Barring this season, was still a very, very good contributor, having double figures in both goals and assists, homegrown, very young. All these things you don't really often get, and transferring from one rival to another rival as well. So all these things put together, I think the bid from Man United around 50 million, it's almost comical. Of course we're not going to sell him for that, even though he has a year left on his contract. Personally, I would hope that he stays. So I'm quite optimistic. I saw someone say that, perhaps we're trying to price him quite highly this window and kind of show him who's willing to go out and buy him, showing him that United aren't, really that in for him as well. In hopes that maybe he stays along for preseason next season and falls in love with the way we play under Pochettino and hopefully signs a new deal, because I still like the idea of having Mason Mount at our squad. I like the idea of having, an academy graduate, and I still think he's a good player, and I think there is, room for him in a team of our stature and, the mold that we're trying to build. So I definitely wouldn't sell him for anything other, anything less than 60, but I'd ideally search for something around the 70 mark, because he's, young, homegrown, talented player transferring from one rival to another rival. So I'd hope he stays, if I'm honest. Also because I couldn't bear, watching him tear it up for Man United, or even just play for them, because you'd want him to, continue his legacy with us. So that's what I'm thinking.
Fair dues. Fair dues. Last bit before we need to head off, and especially Pice needs to head off. There has been some more rumors on Gabri Veiga that we're apparently chasing this. I'm still not really sure 100% why. The more I've seen about him, the more I'm unsure. If Poch really wants him, I don't really know. I'm always on the one hand, I want to back a manager. On the other hand, if the manager is the only one that wants a player, I still don't think we should go for it. Do you know what I mean? You're happy to work with Gallagher. Maybe I shouldn't take your word for it. We'll have to wait and see. But somewhat bigger news that came out as we were streaming, actually. Where is it? Here it is. By Matt Law. So, certainly to some extent reliable. Chelsea are said to pay a little more than 30 million. Why can't I zoom in? Thank you. A little more than 30 million pounds for Jackson, Nicolas Jackson from Villarreal, the striker, of course. It is understood that talks are advancing rapidly and that the final details of the deal could even be agreed by the end of this week. I said this on Twitter a few times. I'm still absolutely happy to sign him, as long as that doesn't mean Broja gets gone, because I don't think Broja deserves that at this stage. But if it's a case of both being given a chance, this is a player who has a cheap release clause, who is really good at certain things in terms of goals per shot type thing, in terms of, I don't know how exactly you call the stat, but really good at that. Essentially, the finishing part, our main issue, having little chances, still scoring the goals. That's his best attribute, which is really important. But obviously, Villarreal to Chelsea is a big step. La Liga is the oldest league in Europe, the slowest league in Europe. It's a very big difference to the Premier League. But he could be good. There's a lot of positives to him. There's a few doubts to him as well, especially that he's only really had one good month, essentially. And at the start of the season, Villarreal fans were saying he's absolutely awful and can't control the ball, which does worry me a little bit. But at the same time, I'm like, it's 30 mil. I'm willing to give it a chance, I'm sure, even if it doesn't work out that well. Now that he won't be one of those guys like Hudson-Odoi or whatever on 120k. He will be on 50, 60, 70, something like that. So if it doesn't work out, we will be able to move him on. I'm okay with doing this. This is a relatively risk-free move, as long as it doesn't mean, like I say, Broja gets gone. Or also, I would still like us to still chase a more prolific in terms of name and career and more proven striker. At the same time, I totally understand that so many of these more proven and prolific strikers that we have signed have all flopped. So I get that. And people say, he wouldn't have the pressure. Nobody would. If he comes here and then ends up starting every game, yes, he would have equally the pressure. It doesn't, the transfer fee plays a part, but the biggest pressure comes from playing every game and being trusted upon to score the important goals. That's where the big pressure comes from, not from the transfer fee. And if he is the guy that's going to start most games, but then doesn't score the goals, he will get the scrutiny from the fans, he will get the scrutiny from the media, and it won't be good all the same. So, Pice, because I know you need to head off, thoughts on this? Where do you stand on the whole thing? Are you only okay with it if we sign someone else? Are you okay with it regardless? Are you only okay with it if Broja also is given a chance? Because every video I've seen of him hasn't looked any better than what Broja did on loan at Southampton. I will say that. Nothing he's done has been anything that Broja hasn't done also.
I would be okay with this if we sign a starting striker, which I don't even know if we will now, because we've got Broja and Broja doesn't look like he's leaving. So, I mean, going in with three strikers, Broja, Jackson and a starter would probably then ruin Broja's game time. So I don't
or
really
Jackson's one of the two anyway, yeah.
Yeah, one of the two. So a little bit confused about this, to be quite honest with you. I don't think he's the guy to...
Unless we're planning to send him to Strasbourg, but I don't think he'd be happy with that.
No, yeah. I don't know. It's a weird deal for me because I think, some raw attributes are definitely there. I watched Senegal's game against Benin, and it was a terrible pitch, but you could see he's quite a raw player. I think the most impressive thing, though, for me, from what I have seen, is his movement in behind. He makes some very, very good runs.
Which is utterly pointless because that doesn't happen at Chelsea.
Yeah, well, usually, when we have players, they just don't pick out the runs that the guys make. So it was a bit like that in the Senegal Benin game. And then against Brazil last night, actually, he came off for 10 minutes and won a penalty. So, he's definitely got a lot of potential. I just don't think a player like this should be starting for us in a big season. People got to remember this is a big season for Pochettino. As much as we're doing business and clearing out the squad and things might look a little bit better on the sort of squad clear-outs, type of thing in terms of the squad size, it's still going to be very important that Pochettino gets the results to make the fans not turn on him, because unfortunately that Spurs relationship is always going to linger there. So I think Pochettino's got to hit the ground running, and I think it's a big risk if you play this guy up front. Having said that, there's always the possibility that this guy could be the starting striker and do better than any other striker we've signed. So then
there's always the possibility. Absolutely.
Yeah,
it could mean Ivan Toney in January. I still think having Steak as a sponsor makes that less likely, but that's a whole different topic. And yes, Danzo Broja did tear his ACL, but doesn't he deserve a chance to prove that he's still good after? There's a player that's been at the club since he's 8 years old and just signed a 6-year contract extension less than a year ago. Doesn't he deserve that chance? I think he does. Especially in a situation where if he wouldn't have torn that ACL, he probably would have started nearly every game in the second half of the season. I think a player like that, we shouldn't, we're not a football club that needs to so urgently replace players. We can give a young player that has given so much to our club in every way the time to at least prove if he's still good after the injury. And the fact that he's ahead of schedule in recovery bodes well for looking quite good in dealing with the injury. Otherwise, you wouldn't come back ahead of schedule. That is a good sign in terms of that his body, his muscles, his tendons are dealing with it and are recovering from it fairly well. Otherwise, he wouldn't be ahead of schedule. Bacham, what's your perspective on this Jackson deal? I'm not expecting anyone to be an expert on him, and I find it funny when people do think they're an expert on it, because all you've watched is comps. That's it. Don't pretend you know anything else. Because comps mean fuck all. I can show you the best comp in the world of Kai Havertz. And still, as you see, this fan base thinks he's dreadful. But I can still give you a 3-minute compilation of Havertz looking like Messi. I can guarantee you, even from his time at Chelsea. Comps mean nothing. Okay, because he's only been good for a month. Comps mean a bit more, because if you get 3 minutes from 1 month, that's a bit better, I guess. But what do you make of it?
Well, I think it's very interesting. I think it's whenever we sign these very big strikers or big players in general, they almost always don't work out. So I'm all for taking a gamble. I think our scouting department, we've talked about him having a good month. I'd be slightly worried if it's just something that's come out of the blue. Someone watched Villarreal against Atletico where he scored and was like, oh, he's good, he scored a goal. We don't do that here. Let's get him. But it seems that we've been looking for him for I think it was 2 years. But if I look at the stats from him, Pies was talking about his running in behind earlier, something that we are going to need in probably 10 games next season, if more. When we play against the other top 6 sides, they're not always as deep. But he also has phenomenal stats in both finishing, hold up play, link up play, box movement as well, where he was some of the top percentiles in Europe, like the 97th, 94th, 99th percentile even. So it seems like he's a very good striker as well. And having someone like him come in almost next season, it is. Pies talked about it being a big season. It's not like a season where we have to win the league. It's a season, even though we don't want it to be, with transition, where we try and build a team where we hopefully the season after can compete again. But I think if we see something in this guy, him battling it out for Broja, I think that'd be quite good. And Broja at Southampton was quite good, even though he didn't score as many goals. But I think this is quite interesting.
More goals than Jackson did this season.
In the league, because I think didn't Jackson score 11 and Broja scored 6?
I think Jackson scored 9 in the league, 11 in all comps, I think.
Something like that. Broja, I remember Broja scored 6 goals in the league or something. It wasn't
that 6 goals in 2 months, and then he totally scored 9, I thought, but I could be wrong.
Could be. It's around. But I think it's interesting. I think we should give him the shot because I don't know. Whenever we sign big strikers, it never works. So let's try with the cheap striker. And I think next season probably is the time to do it. And having someone to battle.
No, you're right. He scored 6 goals, but in all comps he scored 10 because he scored in the cup, in the FA Cup and League Cup for Southampton. So 10 goals in total.
So around the same.
Yeah.
Even though Jackson maybe played 6
and Broja was
I think it's
a good bit younger than Jackson was this season.
He was in first pretty much loan, but I think it's interesting, and I don't fault the ability to do it because when we sign these Badia Shield, Edouard Mendy, they usually pay off. So let's see. I'm quite excited by this transfer, to be honest. He doesn't have that much pressure on him as well.
No, fair dues. Gonna go to Mo in a second, and we're gonna finish it off after this straight away anyway. But Pice needs to head off, so Pice, thank you for your time as always, mate. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll chat to you soon.
Big up, Pice.
Yeah, cheers, guys. See you later.
Everyone, check out the link to his website down in the description, guys. But yeah, Pice, see you soon, and we'll chat to you soon. Mo, though, thoughts on Jackson? What'd you make of that one?
And I can't lie, I'm a big fan of these types of signings. I really am, and I feel like it creates less pressure for players. And I mean, you look at the pressures that is being put on Mudryk compared to Madueke at the moment. You can see there's a lot more expectation on Mudryk because of his price tag than there is on Madueke, who's just being allowed to kind of come into his style, come into his game. And actually, he has shown bright sparks, don't get me wrong. But in reality, both players, for me, haven't really established their first 11. Like they haven't established themselves to be their first 11 yet. But what tends to happen is whenever you pay a lot more for a player, people just expect them to hit the ground running. People expect them to be complete players. And when you're paying this type of little money, I think people are more likely to underestimate and be unsure. Therefore, they tend to have their better expectations of just watching and seeing how the play is and making their judgments as they kind of go along, which will definitely suit Jackson in this case. And from the very little I have seen, and I'm very unsure about him as a player in terms of how he will be able to facilitate all of his style into the Premier League. And it's a very physical league. And the way I kind of look at it is when players are playing in less physical leagues, I do tend to think that the adjustment period is required for them to actually feel far more comfortable. He seems very pacey. He seems technically really good. But again, I look at it from the perspective of if a team is sitting deep, will he struggle with those deep blocks like we already do? And his finishing is obviously quite impressive. And he's still quite young, so we still do need to develop him. But I'm a big fan. Regardless, I think for 30 million, there's no loss in this, and the resale value is there if things don't work out for us to be able to sell him up and on a higher price. So yeah, man, I'm really happy with the signing. I look forward to seeing what he does. I just want it to be completed, and then we can get on to the next signing. I'll be honest, right now I am so focused on midfield signings that any other signings, my brain can't even be like, hey, I want to focus on this for much time.
But seemingly this might happen before the midfield, though. So
yeah, that's why. That's that also too, man. I mean, they tweeted out the whole Ecuador freaking flag at one point, and it got deleted almost immediately, and everyone was freaking out on the timeline. I thought I'd woken up to something, and clearly I didn't. And so right now, I want Caciedo to be confirmed as soon as possible, but I'm still quite happy with signing players like this.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's about time we round this one out. It has been a long one, but we had, well, first of all, a lot of news of today, a lot of news from the last couple of days to catch up on. We didn't even get to talk about Paramount Plus as a sponsor being denied by the Premier League.
Shame on you, Premier League. Shame on you.
Exactly. Shame on you, Premier League. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to round this one out. I haven't told you today, but if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated. Hit that like button on your way out. Just one click of a button that doesn't cost you any money or any time. Please do check out all of my wonderful guests down in the description. Their Twitters. Bertram has won it twice with one of the best handles I've seen. Mo's handle you can see on screen. Mohamed Idol, please do check it out. And of course, Pice's website, as well as his Twitter for all your latest Chelsea news. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Up to Chelsea. Upwards and onwards. And we'll see you.
Come on, Caciedo. Come on, Chelsea.